Chapter 733. With Liu Ye's attack, the dragon soaring realm only had the ability to fight against the Blood Clan. Judging from the situation, the Blood Clan still had the upper hand. He looked up and saw that Guangjing was fighting with the Heavenly Saint. They were evenly matched. The monk's Vajra eyes were filled with anger. The Kasaya on his body was torn open, revealing his firm muscles. His chi of blood was boiling as he displayed his ability to subdue demons. He saw that the swordsmen of Howran Academy were struggling to hold on, and Xue Xiao was shuttling back and forth in the sword formation. He also saw that in the distance, the old Blood Clan member who had come to Dragon Soaring Realm was looking at him with fear. At a glance, he could see everything that was happening on the battlefield that covered a radius of dozens of miles. Even though Liu Yi was extremely exhausted, his strength completely depleted, and he wanted nothing more than to fall asleep, he knew that he couldn't sleep yet. He had already come this far. If he did not do his best, it would be a pity. In the sword formation of Howran Academy, the sword chi crisscrossed. Xue Xiao gritted his teeth and roared. This invasion of Dragon Soaring Realm was a complete failure. No matter what decision the Blood World would make, his failure was irrefutable. He was too ashamed to return to the Blood World. Dying in battle here was his only and best choice. With such a thought, Xue Xiao completely gave up his defense and beat Yuan Changsuan and the other swordsmen into a mess. When there were more than 10 of them, they could not do anything to Xue Xiao. Now there were only a few left and all of them were injured. How could they resist? In front of Xue Xiao's desperate stance, they could not hold on for long. However, no one retreated. The swordsmen would rather break than bend. In the face of such a strong enemy, they could only fight with their lives on the line. All of you will die. Xue Xiao shouted. After fighting with his life on the line, he finally found a good opportunity to approach Yuan Changsun. He was so fast that no one could stop him in time. Xue Xiao stretched out his hand, and his sharp fingers pierced into Yuan Changsuan's chest, grabbing his heart. Headmaster! The swordsmen nearby were all shocked. They wanted to come to his rescue, but how could they make it in time? Seeing that Yuan Changsun was about to lose his life here, Xue Xiao suddenly froze. An indescribable sense of danger shrouded him as if it was real. Under that thick and sticky sense of danger, it was extremely difficult for him to even move a finger. Before he could react to what had happened, he felt a slight pain in his neck and lost consciousness. The big hand that was holding Yuan Changsuan's heart also lost its strength. Taking advantage of such a good opportunity, Yuan Changsuan's body surged with sword light. The sharp sword chi cut the blood owl into countless pieces. Blood splattered everywhere and rained down. Looking at the scarlet figure standing behind Xue Xiao and gently swinging his saber, Yuan Changsuan had a grateful expression on his face. He knew in his heart that if Liu Yi hadn't come to his aid in time, he would already be dead by now. Blood Owl's back was facing Liu Yi, so he did not see what had happened. But he was facing Liu Yi, so he did not see it clearly either. Because at the critical moment of life and death, Liu Yi, who was wearing the dragon throne, appeared in front of him. That kind of bizarre speed had already surpassed the limits of what the cultivators of this realm could achieve. It was not something that a Cloud River tier cultivator could catch. In the blink of an eye, the scarlet figure had already disappeared. It was as if he had never appeared. However, in a battlefield a few miles away, the Heavenly Saint's screams suddenly rang out. Yuan Changsuan turned his head to look and saw the head of the person who caused the Soaring Dragon Realm's crisis being separated from his body. That slender scarlet figure flashed in Yuan Changsuan's vision and disappeared once again. Dozens of miles away from the battlefield, an old member of the Blood Clan was running for his life. He had even activated the secret escape technique of the Blood Clan and desperately burned his blood essence. That shocking saber strike that could cut through the blood river had really frightened him. If he could still exert the cultivation of the Divine Ocean tier, he could try to fight against that saber strike. But now, he only had the foundation of the Divine Ocean tier. How could he block that saber strike? In his perception, the connection between the Blood Realm and this realm had become weak. So he made a prompt decision to activate his secret technique to escape. But the sense of danger in his heart did not weaken because he was far away from the battlefield. Instead, it became stronger and stronger. He felt cold all over. That was the reaction of his body caused by the trembling of his divine soul. Even though he knew that he should not look back at this time, he could not help but turn his head to look back. With one glance, the old member of the blood clan looked desperate. In his field of vision, the scarlet figure was approaching him at an unimaginable speed. When he looked at it, it was still far away. In the blink of an eye, it was already halfway there. Another breath. It was close to him. "I'll fight you to the death." The old member of the blood clan was also a courageous person. Knowing that he could not escape, he immediately turned around. His strength surged and his blood essence wriggled. Suddenly, he split into three. This was obviously an extremely mysterious doppelganger technique. Just by looking at it with the naked eye, the three old members of the blood clan were exactly the same. Even their auras were the same. It was as if he could really split into three. Each of the three old members of the blood clan had his own full strength. One of them rushed directly toward Lu Yi, while the other two flanked him from the left and right. In the face of the old member of the blood clan, Lu Yi, who was running all the way, only gently waved the dragon spine saber in his hand. The faint roar of a dragon resounded through heaven and earth. The blood-red arc of the saber slashed through the void. It slashed out from the dragon spine saber and spread outward. The three figures that rushed over did not have any ability to block or dodge at all. They were cut in half by the arc of the saber. Two of them turned into blood essence and disappeared. The one on the right remained. That was the old member of the blood clan. The neatly cut lower body fell to the ground, while the upper body was still suspended in midair. The internal organs of the wound were mixed with blood and spilled into the sky. Looking at the slender scarlet figure, the old member of the blood clan sighed softly. It's not the fault of war. This time, the blood clan's invasion of the Dragon Ascension realm could not be said to be inadequate. After 800 years of dependence, the cultivation world of the Dragon Ascension realm was in a decline. With the help of the Heavenly Gully sect, it could be said that the progress was perfect. Logically speaking, it would not take long for the Blood Clan to occupy the Dragon Ascension realm. The Blood realm could also devour the essence of the entire realm. But who would have thought that a completely unreasonable monster would suddenly appear out of the blue? Cultivators themselves were limited by heaven and earth. They could only exert a corresponding amount of strength. However, the restrictions of an external object like the dragon spine armor did not come from heaven and earth, but from the cultivator. What's more, it was an armor made from the body of a true dragon and a long blade made from the spine of a true dragon. Such things should not have appeared in the soaring dragon realm, and no one should have been able to wield them. The old member of the Blood Clan was dead, but the battlefield in the distance was still fierce. However, Lu Yi, who had killed the old member of the Blood Clan, was completely exhausted. His consciousness was hazy, and he could faint at any time. With a slight thought, the Dragon King armor on his body quickly retracted. Pieces of scales gathered and shrank, separating from Lu Ye's body. It turned back into an inconspicuous ball the size of a baby's head and fell to the ground. The dragon spine saber was also inserted into the ground until the hilt was visible. At the last moment of his consciousness, Lu Yi reached into the spirit beast pouch at his waist and released Hupa. After that, he fell unconscious again. Before using the Dragon Emperor, Lu Yi had already informed Yi about this, and he had also predicted what might happen next. So when Hooper appeared, Yi flashed out and saw Lu Ye's current state, knowing that his prediction had come true. Despite her panic, Yi quickly picked up Lu Yi, put away the dragon throne, and summoned her spirit boat. Carrying Lu Yi and Hoopa, she rushed in the direction of the Medicine Valley. Looking at the current Dragon Ascension realm, only the fairy doctor could save Lu Yi. As for the outcome of the distant battle, it was no longer Yi's concern. Lu Yi had risked half his life to break the altar, destroy the blood river, weaken the connection between the two realms, and at the last moment, kill the two strongest members of the Blood Clan. If the Dragon Ascension realm still lost with such a foundation, it could only be said that there was no hope for this realm. Yi had never raised the speed of her weapon to such a high level, but even so, she felt that it was too slow. In her arms, Lu Ye's vitality was weak, like a candle flame in the wind, about to be extinguished at any time. Lu Ye's current condition was very similar to Zhuang Bufan's back then. Compared to Zhuang Bufan's condition, it was even worse. Although the Dragon Throne had recognized Lu Yi as its master and allowed him to control part of its power, what he had done today was much more exhausting than what Zhuang Bufan had done back then. Zhuang Bufan had only tried to use the Dragon Throne once, and his life was about to end. What would happen to Lu Yi now? In the distance, the Medicine Valley was in sight. In front of the valley, two figures seemed to be waiting. It was the fairy doctor and Yi Lioli, who had stayed behind. He landed on the ground and pleaded in a weak tone that she had never used before, "Senior, please save Lu Yi." In her desperation, she had completely forgotten Lu Ye's identity in this realm. "I already know." The fairy doctor nodded. She had been waiting here for Lu Yi. When Yi Lioli saw Lu Ye's current state and recalled the last moments of Zhuang Bufan's life, she couldn't help but cover her mouth as tears streamed down her face. The tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa had been destroyed, and only she and Lu Yi were left in the family. If anything happened to Lu Yi, she would really be all alone. Great sorrow surged from her heart, almost drowning her. Her mind shook violently, as if a seal in her body had been broken. Many inexplicable messages surged in her mind, attacking her weak divine soul. Yi Lioli let out a soft cry and fell to the ground. The sudden turn of events stunned Yi, but she still instinctively supported Yi Lioli and followed the fairy doctor into the medicinal valley. The battlefield under the ravine had gone through several days and nights of fierce fighting. When all the dust had settled, the battlefield was littered with the corpses of cultivators from the two clans, and the ground under the ravine was dyed red with blood. Everyone who was still alive was covered in wounds and their eyes were bloodshot, but their tired expressions still couldn't hide the excitement in their hearts. "We won." Somewhere on the battlefield, a soft murmur came out. "We won." More voices responded. Then, they turned into earth-shaking shouts and roars. "We won." In this battle, the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon clan had won a Pyrrhic victory. 7017K. Chapter 734. Cultivators went in and out of the Medicine Valley. Many of them looked exhausted and injured, but they still couldn't rest. Those who could walk on their own were still in good condition. Most of them were missing arms and legs, and some were so seriously injured that they couldn't get out of bed. In the next bloody battle, the invading blood breeds were wiped out, but the Soaring Dragon realm had also paid an unimaginable price. Throughout the recorded history of the Soaring Dragon realm, there had never been such a large-scale battle with such heavy casualties. In front of the straw hut, Lu Yi sat weakly on the chair that Zhuang Bufan used to sit on. His lower body was covered with a thick animal skin blanket, and he coughed lightly from time to time. The fairy doctor was beside him, checking on his injuries. After killing the old blood breeds in the battle that day, Lu Yi fell into a coma and only woke up yesterday. This was the result of the fairy doctor using all her methods. Otherwise, he would have been in a deep sleep for a long time, and might even have died in his sleep. Although he had woken up now, his body's condition was extremely bad. There were no injuries on his body, but Lu Yi could feel an unprecedented weakness. It was as if his entire body had been drained dry. He was a young man less than 20 years old, but at this moment his face showed some signs of aging, and even his hair was white. Yi Lioli and Huang Liang stood at the side, waiting nervously. After a long time, the fairy doctor withdrew her hand from Lu Ye's wrist and stuffed his hand back into the animal skin blanket. "Senior, how is he?" he asked nervously. Huang Liang also looked over, his heart in his throat. The fairy doctor glanced at Lu Yi, and Lu Yi said weakly, "There's no harm in saying it. I know my own body best." The fairy doctor nodded and said, "His life is saved for the time being." Yi was not happy, but even more nervous. She heard the unfinished words in the fairy doctor's words, "For the time being?" His body is severely weakened, so although his life is saved for the time being, no one can say what will happen in the future, the fairy doctor explained. In fact, according to her diagnosis, Lu Yi probably wouldn't live for more than a month in this state. And this was the result of Lu Yi swallowing a large number of spirit pills and 5 drops of soul water before using the Dragon Emperor. If he hadn't made these preparations, the slash with the Dragon Emperor would have been enough to drain his life force in one go. The cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm were limited by the world, and could only cultivate to the peak of the Cloud River tier now. Even invaders like the Blood Breeds couldn't unleash power beyond this tier. However, an external power like the Dragon Emperor wasn't restricted. The only restriction it faced was the cultivator itself. Beneath the Heavenly Gorge altar, the saber strike that Lu Yi had unleashed had far surpassed the standard of a Cloud River tier cultivator. Thus, it was naturally impossible that he hadn't paid a price. But now, it seemed that this price was unbearable. If the body is empty, can't it be nourished? He asked nervously. We have many pills that can nourish the body. Alright, we also have real dragon scales and soul water. You can use them all. Dragon scales replenished blood, and soul water replenished divine sense. In Yi's opinion, since Lu Ye's body was weakened, they just had to find a way to replenish it. The fairy doctor sighed, shook her head and said, the world has a source, and so do people. Take this realm for example. The Blood Realm has been sucking for 800 years, and the Soaring Dragon Realm source has been drained greatly, causing the upper limit of the cultivator's cultivation level to continuously decrease. Unless the source of this realm can be replenished, it will be impossible to recreate the glory of 800 years ago. Lu Ye's body is in the same situation. His deficiency is not something that can be replenished with ordinary things. Senior, you don't have a way? Yi was about to cry. I am powerless. If she had the ability, Zhuang Bufan wouldn't have had to die that day. Lu Ye's present situation was exactly the same as Zhuang Bufan's. His remaining life force could only maintain his life for a short period of time, and it wouldn't be too long. The fairy doctor left, and Yi knelt in front of Lu Yi, crying loudly. However, she was a spirit, and no matter how sad she cried, no tears flowed out. The sorrow in her heart couldn't be vented. Hu Po's mood was also unprecedentedly low. He crouched at the side, his tiger eyes dim. Seeing this scene, Huang Liang sighed, little friend, rest well first. I will come back to visit you later. His previous feeling was right. The young man in front of him was really a savior. When the Soaring Dragon Realm's cultivation world was at its most desperate, he was the one who wore the dragon throne and cut through the haze, bringing light to the Soaring Dragon Realm. However, looking at Lu Ye's current state, Huang Liang's heart was filled with a bitter taste. Should the savior of the world pay such a heavy price? He was still a young man who wasn't even 20 years old. He had saved the world, so who could save him? Even the little fairy doctor was unable to do anything. In this world, there was probably no one who could help him. Senior, please wait. Lu Yi gently patted Yi's trembling shoulder and looked at Huang Liang. I want to know what the situation is over at Tianhe. Huang Liang hesitated slightly. Little friend, after paying such a heavy price, I think I still have the right to be concerned. Huang Liang couldn't help but sigh. Lu Yi had already said so much. If he still refused, it would seem a little unreasonable. Immediately, he explained everything that he knew about the situation. In the battle that day, the blood breeds that invaded the blood world were exterminated, and the traction altar was destroyed as well. Thanks to the sword that borrowed power from the heavens and earth, even the blood world's attachment to the Soaring Dragon Realm became much weaker. However, things weren't over yet. Tianhe was still there, and the blood realm was still attached to the Soaring Dragon Realm, so the root of the problem hadn't been solved. For the time being, the blood breeds couldn't invade the Soaring Dragon Realm. However, as time passed, once the connection between the two realms became closer, the blood breeds would definitely make a comeback. Moreover, in the process of the blood realm attaching itself to the Soaring Dragon Realm, it was constantly absorbing the foundation of the Soaring Dragon Realm, which was the world's origin that the fairy doctor mentioned. Therefore, even if the blood breeds didn't invade in the future, the problem of the blood realm's attachment couldn't be solved, and the Soaring Dragon Realm would gradually be destroyed. In order to guard against the possible invasion of the blood breeds, the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm are urgently setting up a large formation under Tianhe. In this way, even if the blood breeds appear again, they will be walking right into the trap. The blood breeds were indeed powerful, but if the soaring dragon realm was properly prepared, however many of them dared to come, they would all die. Once a formation was properly set up, the power it could unleash was extremely impressive. However, that was all. The only thing the cultivators of the soaring dragon realm could do now was to deal with the blood breeds. They had no way to deal with the blood realm. The saddest thing in the world was this. They clearly knew that a guillotine was hanging above their heads, slowly falling, but no one could stop it. When the guillotine fell one day, the soaring dragon realm would definitely be reduced to ashes, and the living beings of this realm would no longer exist. That would be a true disaster that would destroy the realm. After listening to Huang Liang's explanation, Lu Yi flicked his finger, and a jade scroll flew out. I've sorted out some things about formations. I hope it will be of some help to all of you. Huang Liang was startled, and immediately revealed an expression of admiration. He bowed to Lu Yi and said, "Thank you, little friend." He sighed in his heart. As expected of the savior of the world. He was already in such a state, yet he was still thinking about the soaring dragon realm. Such breadth of mind really made him admire him. Huang Liang had already heard about how profound Lu Ye's attainments in formations were from his own formation cultivators. The things that Lu Yi had sorted out would undoubtedly be of great use. Sect Master Huang, please go ahead. Lu Yi waved his hand weakly. Huang Liang nodded and said, I'll come back to visit you later. Huang Liang left with a look of regret, lamenting that the heavens were jealous of geniuses. He was still sobbing. Lu Yi rubbed her head, silently comforting her. Suddenly, he seemed to have thought of something. She raised her head and said, Lu Yi, let's go back to the 9 prefectures. The fairy doctor and the entire soaring dragon realm were helpless in Lu Ye's current situation, but it did not mean that no one in the 9 prefectures could cure him. No matter what, there were divine ocean realm cultivators in the 9 prefectures. Their cultivation level was much higher than that of the soaring dragon realm. Perhaps the divine ocean realm cultivators could resolve the symptoms that the fairy doctor was helpless in? Lu Yi shook his head and said, we can't go back. If he could think of going back to the 9 prefectures to think of a solution, how could he not? But how could he return to the 9 prefectures? In the secret realm of the celestial origin city, he was sent out by the city lord. In the secret realm of the realm of beasts, after the crisis of the entire realm of beasts was resolved, a passage to the Cloud River battlefield appeared at the military supply office. What about the secret realm of the soaring dragon realm? Not to mention whether there was a place like the military supply office. Even if there was, it was impossible to return to the 9 prefectures before the crisis of the soaring dragon realm was completely resolved. This was also the fundamental reason why he did not hesitate to use the Dragon Emperor, even though he knew that it was extremely dangerous. He was not the kind of person who could casually care about the world, nor was he the kind of unparalleled righteous person who was willing to die for others. From the beginning to the end, he was clear about one thing. When he entered the soaring dragon realm, he lived and died with this realm. If he wanted to live, he had to protect the soaring dragon realm first. Unfortunately, even if he fought with his life on the line, he could only delay the destruction of the soaring dragon realm and could not cure the disaster facing this realm. Perhaps after the problem of this realm was truly resolved, there would be a passage that would allow him to leave this realm, but before that, he could not return to the 9 prefectures. The situation of the soaring dragon realm was not the same as that of the realm of beasts. In the realm of beasts, many cultivators of the 9 prefectures entered, and they could join forces and work together. But here, he was alone, and there was no room for cooperation or discussion with other cultivators. Then what should we do? He was a little out of her wits. Seeing Lu Yi in such a state, her heart felt like it was being twisted by a knife, but there was nothing she could do. She secretly hated herself for not having any talent in the path of medical cultivation. If she had chosen the path of medical cultivation back then, she would have been able to help Lu Yi a lot more. In the beginning, she actually wanted to walk the path of medical cultivation. She also learned from her second senior sister Shui Yuan for a long time, but she did not show any special talent. Instead, she walked smoothly on the path of magical cultivation. 7017K. Chapter 735. Looking back now, regretted not persevering on the path of medical cultivation. However, the path of cultivation was not easy to change, especially now that she was a cultivator of the Cloud River tier. At most, she could only cultivate medical cultivation. She secretly made up her mind that if she could return alive this time, she would definitely consult her second senior sister about medical cultivation. "Where's Lioli?" Lu Yi turned around but did not see Yi Lioli's figure. Yi shook her head, indicating that she did not know. She was in grief and did not have the energy to care about anything else. Inside the straw hut, the fairy doctor was preparing medicinal herbs when Yi Lioli stepped in. As if she had expected this, the fairy doctor did not even raise her head. "You're awake." Her words were strange because Yi Lioli did not wake up from a dream or a coma. "Elder sister," Yi Lioli softly called out. If Lu Yi heard this, she would definitely be surprised. Because ever since they came to the Medicine Valley, Yi Lioli and Yi had called the fairy doctor senior, so this elder sister was undoubtedly very abrupt. What was even stranger was that the fairy doctor did not have any abnormal reaction to this. "Thank you for taking me in and taking care of me, elder sister. If not for you, I might have dissipated long ago, and it would be impossible for me to gain intelligence." As she spoke, Yi Lioli gracefully bowed to the fairy doctor. The fairy doctor's hands did not stop moving, and her gentle voice sounded. "We're in the same boat, no need to thank me. You've already made your decision?" Yi Lioli nodded. "Sixth brother did very well. He's the person I've been waiting for. He will definitely succeed." The fairy doctor sighed. "I hope your obsession can be resolved." "I will." Yi Lioli nodded heavily. Yi Lioli prostrated on the ground and respectfully kowtowed to the fairy doctor. She stood up and smiled. "Elder sister, take care." When she turned around, it was an eternal farewell. Looking in the direction of the door, the fairy doctor was silent for a long time. The disappointment in her heart eventually turned into a sigh. In the straw hut, Lu Yi was lying on the bed, and Yi Lioli was feeding him medicine. Thanks to Lu Ye's attack that borrowed the power of heaven and earth, cutting into the ravine and weakening the blood realm's attachment to the soaring dragon realm, Yi Lioli's condition also rapidly improved after the bloody battle at the ravine. Her old illness showed no signs of flaring up. "I'll do it myself." Lu Yi wasn't used to being served like this. Yi Lioli pursed her lips and chuckled. "In the past, it was sixth brother who took care of me. Now, it's my turn to take care of sixth brother. This is called..." She pondered for a moment. "Reciprocity demands reciprocity." Bi, who was at the side, was amused. Lu Yi could not help but laugh as well. Hoopa raised his paw to cover his eyes, looking as though he could not bear to look at them. Yi Lioli was annoyed. "Sixth brother, sister-in-law is laughing at me." The young lady's face was full of anger as she acted coquettishly. Even though she wasn't willing to correct the way Yi Lioli addressed her, Yi couldn't help but blush every time she heard her call her that. He stole a glance at Lu Yi, but there was no reaction, as if he hadn't heard anything. "You didn't teach her a lesson either." Yi Lioli pouted and fed Lu Yi the medicine in the spoon. The bowl of medicine was quickly finished. Yi Lioli put down the bowl in her hands and wiped the corners of Lu Ye's mouth. Her movements were gentle as she said softly, "Sixth brother, let's go." Lu Yi was confused. "Where are we going?" "Anywhere we want." The little girl's expression was filled with yearning and anticipation. "I've always stayed in Feng province, but now that I've come out with you, I've learned about the wonders of the outside world. Let's walk around and see the sceneries of the world, taste the famous delicacies of the world. It's better than staying in this grass hut forever." As she spoke, she suddenly had a thought. "Perhaps if we go out for a walk, your condition will improve a bit?" Yi was listening from the side. She originally wanted to stop them, as it wasn't convenient for Lu Yi to go out in his current state. However, after hearing Yi Lioli's last sentence, she swallowed her words. Lu Yi muttered to himself. He was also moved by Yi Lioli's words. It wasn't that he felt that Yi Lioli's words made sense. Instead, he thought back to the past few years. Ever since he was rescued from Evil Moon Valley by Haotian Alliance and stepped onto the path of cultivation, he had been working hard to raise his cultivation level. He had been competing with the cultivators of Myriad Devil Ridge in all sorts of ways. No matter how much he had grown, he would never feel like it was enough. There was always a sense of urgency pressing down on his body and mind. He had walked all over the Spirit Stream battlefield, and had also run to many places in the Cloud River battlefield. However, all the places he had passed were filled with fighting and killing. He hadn't even carefully appreciated the beautiful scenery of these two battlefields. Furthermore, in the 9 regions, he hadn't even left the Jade Blood sect's main sect. He hadn't seen the true splendor of the 9 regions. If he really died like this, he would inevitably feel some regret. At the final juncture of his life, although he couldn't appreciate the scenery of the 9 regions, looking at the dragon-soaring realms seemed not bad. Perhaps his own physical condition had caused some changes in his mentality. Lu Yi suddenly realized that when it came to cultivation, what was the rush? It was a pity that he hadn't thought of this before. It wasn't too late to realize it now. Then, let's go? Lu Yi raised his eyebrows. He left without saying goodbye to anyone. That day, Yi Lioli and Yi Lioli quietly left the Medicine Valley with Lu Yi. They set off from the extreme north and headed south. This was because Yi Lioli said that the south of the dragon-soaring realm was a place with beautiful mountains and clear waters. It was a place full of outstanding people, and the scenery was the most beautiful. A group of 2 people, 1 spirit and 1 tiger, left the Medicine Valley like thieves. In the following days, the group was not in a hurry. They entered the most prosperous city at every place they arrived at and saw the most beautiful scenery. Along the way, they left behind extremely beautiful memories. In order to make it easier for Lu Yi to travel, Yi Lioli and Yi Lioli personally built a wheelchair for him. When they arrived at the bustling city, they pushed him forward, looking at the various states of the world and experiencing the warmth and coldness of the world. The bloody battle at Tianhe previously had a huge impact on the cultivation world of the dragon-soaring realm, but it didn't have much of an impact on those mortals. Although many mortals had heard some things, those things were too far away from them, and it wasn't something they could interfere with. Their life and death depended entirely on the efforts of the cultivators. If the cultivators of the dragon-soaring realm could succeed, they could live. If the cultivators of the dragon-soaring realm failed, they could only be at the mercy of the cultivators. It could be said that this was a kind of sorrow, but sometimes ignorance was also a kind of blessing. Lu Ye's mood was unprecedentedly calm. Since leaving the Medicine Valley, he had never thought about cultivation again. As a result, he felt that his state of mind had improved a lot. Correspondingly, his body's condition was slowly deteriorating. Just as the fairy doctor said, the world had its source, and so did people. His source was too weak, so no matter what method he used, it was difficult to replenish it. The deterioration of his body gradually made him a little drowsy, and he often inexplicably fell asleep. Occasionally, when he woke up, he could hear Yi Lioli's suppressed sobs. Once again in the Feng province, in the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, Yi Lioli pushed Lu Ye's wheelchair, walking in the familiar environment. Although it hadn't been long, this once famous mountain villa had become dilapidated. The night was enchanting. On the small island in the center of the Saber Lake, Yi Lioli opened her arms, as if to embrace the entire starry sky. Her cheerful voice rang out. "Sixth brother, do you still remember what happened when you were young?" "What happened?" Lu Yi asked. How could he remember what happened when he was young? After coming to this realm, the information he had obtained was actually very limited. You, big brother, and second brother stole an ancient scroll from father. I don't know what was recorded in it, but father found out and then hung you here to be beaten. Lu Yi imagined that scene, and his eyes couldn't help but twitch. There was such a thing? Yi Lioli chuckled. I brought you food and big brother and second brother both ate it. Only you were stubborn and didn't eat a single bite. In the end, you fainted from hunger. Father was quite frightened, and since then, he hasn't been harsh on you. Lu Yi quietly listened. He had never experienced the feelings of siblings before, and now that he heard Yi Lioli's story and imagined that scene, he felt that it was quite interesting. Sixth brother, What was recorded in that ancient scroll? Yi Liuli asked. I didn't read it, so I don't know. Lu Yi shook his head, speaking the truth. All right. Yi Liuli didn't ask any more questions. She raised her hand and gently stroked it, her voice becoming calm. The wind is blowing. There was a murderous aura in the wind. In the darkness, figures gathered from all directions and surrounded the island in an instant. Lu Ye's expression was calm, Yi's expression was indifferent, and even Yi Liuli didn't panic in the slightest. When the leader of the group saw this, his heart couldn't help but skip a beat. He instinctively felt that something was wrong, but things had already come to this point, and there was no turning back. Xiong Taishan. Lu Yi looked at the burly man and immediately understood who had come. Xiong Taishan, the leader of the Divine Will sect. He was also the one who killed Yi Ying. The battle under the ravine swept the entire cultivation world of Dragon Ascension, and no sect was spared. Naturally, the Divine Will sect also participated. In that battle, the Divine Will sect suffered heavy losses and was almost completely annihilated by the blood breeds. Xiong Taishan was lucky to survive. These days, he had been on tenterhooks because he recognized Lu Ye's identity. This young man who shone brightly on the battlefield, and could even be said to have saved the entire Dragon Ascension realm with his own strength, was actually Yi Ying's sixth son. How could this be? He and Yi Lu had a blood feud, and this hatred couldn't be erased. After that battle, Yi Lu had shockingly become the savior of Soaring Dragon, and was even an esteemed guest of the 3 Overlord sections. If such a character wanted to kill him, Xiong Taishan, it would only be a matter of moving his mouth. Xiong Taishan tossed and turned, unable to sleep. More than once, he wanted to strike first to gain the upper hand and kill Lu Yi. However, cultivators came and went from the Medicine Valley, so it wasn't convenient for him to make a move. Who would have thought that Lu Yi actually left the Medicine Valley quietly and didn't hide his whereabouts, which gave him an opportunity to take advantage of. He gathered a group of people and followed them all the way here, and he couldn't hold back anymore. That's me, Xiong Taishan. Xiong Taishan didn't intend to hide his identity and openly admitted it. His eyes were like an eagle's as he stared at Lu Yi. Yi Lu, hand over the Dragon Emperor. 7017K. Chapter 736. Killing Lu Yi was to get rid of the hidden danger and obtain the Dragon Emperor. Otherwise, once the news of Lu Ye's death spread, he wouldn't be able to pass the 3 Overlord Sects test. The might of the Dragon Emperor was already deeply ingrained in people's hearts. That earth-shattering blade was a height that the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm could never reach in their lifetime. Therefore, even if the danger of the Dragon Emperor spread along with the news of Lu Ye's heavy injuries, it still couldn't stop some people from coveting it. Xiong Taishan was like this, and so were the cultivators he was entangled with. With the Dragon Emperor in hand, he couldn't command the 3 Overlord sects, but at least in the entire Soaring Dragon realm, no one would dare to threaten his safety. You want it? Under the night sky, Lu Ye's eyelids drooped slightly, and his voice became low. Then he flicked his finger. Take it yourself. Along with the flick of his finger, a blood-red ray of light shot out. The ray of light spun and landed in front of Xiong Taishan, stabbing into the ground with a hiss, only revealing the top part. Dragon Spine Saber. Xiong Taishan was dumbfounded. He never thought that Lu Yi would have such a reaction. Looking at his posture, it was clear that he would give it to him as long as he wanted it. For a moment, Xiong Taishan was bewildered. He didn't know what Lu Yi was doing. On the contrary, many of the people he brought looked at the huge saber hilt on the ground with fervent expressions. The Dragon Spine Saber was a long saber used by Long Wangkai. Long Wangkai was 3 feet tall, and the Dragon Spine Saber was 16 feet long. Just the hilt alone was more than 3 feet long. This was definitely not something an ordinary cultivator could wield with their physical body. Therefore, although they were fervent, no one rashly went up to attack. Who knew if there was a trick in this? Yi Lu, what do you want to do? Xiong Taishan gritted his teeth and asked, but he was somewhat cowardly at heart. Lu Yi slowly shook his head, a look of disappointment on his face. There's nothing wrong with being cautious. But for someone like you, even if your cultivation is high, You won't be able to enter the Hall of Elegance. Xiong Taizhan was a little embarrassed and angry. He was about to retort, but Yi Lioli had already pushed the wheelchair forward under Lu Ye's instructions. One of them had lost his source and was heavily injured and on the verge of death. The other was completely unharmed and had a strong body. However, as the wheelchair slowly approached, it was actually a mighty iron mountain that was pushed back. In front of the dragon spine saber, Lu Yi stretched out his hand and grabbed the saber hilt. An abnormal dark red color flashed across his face. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, he pulled the blood-stained saber out from the ground. Even if I gave it to you, you wouldn't dare to take it. Why bother looking for me? When Lu Yi had decided to bring Yi Lioli north to seek medical treatment, he had already given up on seeking revenge on the Divine Will sect. Firstly, he wasn't the real 6th Yi. Secondly, this was Yi Lioli's wish. She was afraid that her only 6th brother would meet with an accident in the process of seeking revenge. To the Yi Lioli back then, as long as 6th brother was by her side, revenge was no longer important. Therefore, Lu Yi had never thought of finding trouble with Xiong Taizhan. If he hadn't appeared in front of him today, he wouldn't have even paid attention to him. Thank you for your trouble, senior. Lu Yi said softly and put away the dragon spine saber. What are you talking about? Xiong Tieshan's heart couldn't help but tighten when he heard this strange sentence. Go ahead, little friend. I'll take care of the rest. A voice that made Xiong Taizhan and his companions' expressions change drastically suddenly rang out. As the voice rang out, a figure suddenly entered the field. The person wore a silk headscarf and a green robe. Although he was dressed like a scholar, his figure was as straight as a sword and his eyes were as sharp as a blade. When his eyes opened and closed, there was a faint flicker of sword light. Yuan Changzuan. Xiong Tieshan's expression changed drastically. The rest of the cultivators who came with him also looked terrified. When they turned their heads and looked around, their hearts and minds turned cold. Yuan Changzuan hadn't come alone. At some point, there were more people around him. They had originally surrounded Lu Yi, but now they were surrounded by others. Based on their strength, it was reasonable to say that such a thing shouldn't have happened. However, when Lu Yi took out the dragon spine saber and casually threw it, their minds were completely distracted and their perception of the outside world became extremely weak. It was at that time that Yuan Changzuan's men took advantage of the situation. Is this a trap? Xiong Taizhan obviously misunderstood something. He thought that Lu Yi didn't hesitate to leave the Medicine Valley to use himself as bait to lure out those with bad intentions. He didn't know that when Lu Yi was in the Medicine Valley, there were many experts from the 3 overlord sects secretly guarding outside the straw hut. This was because Huang Liang knew that people's hearts were unpredictable. Even a savior like Lu Yi couldn't guarantee that no one would harbor evil intentions in the face of the great temptation of the Dragon Emperor. Previously, there were many cultivators going in and out of the Medicine Valley, but only a few people were qualified to set foot in the straw hut. Lu Yi seemed to have left the Medicine Valley secretly, but in fact, with his seriously injured body and Yi Lioli's methods, how could he hide from Huang Liang and the others? No one stopped him because there was no need to. A savior who was about to die, whose last wish was to see the great rivers and mountains that he had protected with his life. Who could stop him? Who had the heart to stop him? However, the 3 overlord sects had never relaxed their secret protection of Lu Yi, and Yuan Changzuan, the master of Howren Academy, had personally followed him secretly. They thought that Lu Yi didn't notice all this. But in fact, Lu Yi had already seen through them. Under the night sky, the wheelchair gradually moved away and was gradually swallowed by the darkness. From beginning to end, Xiong Taishan and the others didn't dare to act rashly. Although he was also in the Cloud River Realm 9th Order, in front of a top master like Yuan Changzuan, there was no comparison. A trap. Yuan Changzuan's face was cold. You think too highly of yourselves. Waving his hand lightly, a word more chilling than the cold wind came out of his mouth. Kill. Sword lights flashed and crisscrossed, breaking the tranquility of the island and instantly filling the air with the smell of blood. The world is so stupid. Yuan Changzuan felt sad. A few days ago, the Soaring Dragon sect had just recovered from the crisis of being wiped out, But in the face of a savior like Lu Yi, not only did they not feel grateful, there were actually people who dared to have ideas about him. Even if he was the master of Howren Academy, he really couldn't understand how there could be such an ungrateful person in this world. Fortunately, there weren't many people with such ulterior motives, so Yang Kai had taken this opportunity to completely eradicate them. In the future, no one should have any ideas about Lu Yi. Looking in the direction Lu Yi left, Yuan Chengzuan sighed in his heart, hoping that this little friend could live out the rest of his days in peace. Leaving tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, the group set off in the direction of Hua Yen Mountain. This was the beginning of Lu Ye's entry into this world. Whether it was a coincidence or not, it was actually going to be the end. Hua Yen Mountain's Wangyang Peak was the highest peak in the entire Hua Yen Mountain range. Halfway up the mountain, a sea of clouds rolled about. Atop the peak, the group stopped and looked towards the east. As the sun rose, its light sprinkled down. Sitting in his wheelchair, Lu Yi narrowed his eyes slightly as he looked at the rising sun, feeling some regret and nostalgia in his heart. He also obviously felt something and squatted beside Lu Yi, her small face pressed against his hand. There was no fear or sadness in her eyes, just quietly staring at Lu Yi, as if she wanted to imprint his face into the depths of her soul forever. She, Hu Pe, and Lu Yi depended on each other in life and death. If Lu Yi died, the two of them wouldn't be able to live alone. Liuli, Lu Yi softly called out. The girl on the side sobbed in response. Sixth brother can only accompany you up to this point. You have to walk the rest of the way on your own. Yi Liuli silently turned her head, but she was already sobbing. Separation in life and death, no matter when and where, was the most painful thing. She kept shaking her head, as if she couldn't accept such a cruel fact. Lu Yi was about to open his mouth to comfort her, but Liuli had already squatted down and grabbed his hand. Sixth brother, Liuli is very lucky to have sixth brother by my side. Sixth brother, I've waited for you for many years, I can't hold on much longer. Hearing these confusing words, Lu Ye's face was filled with astonishment, but this astonishment quickly turned into shock. Yi also clearly sensed something and straightened her upper body, staring at Yi Liuli in a daze. Hu Po also widened his tiger eyes. In those deep tiger eyes, there was a reflection of a body that was glowing. It was as if her entire body was burning, but the flames that enveloped her didn't cause any discomfort. Instead, it was very warm. The flames spread out, enveloping Lu Yi completely. The next moment, Lu Ye's eyes were filled with disbelief, because an extremely gentle power flowed into his body through Yi Liuli's palm. That power quickly replenished the origin energy he had lost from using the Dragon Emperor. It was like rain after a long drought, like an old tree sprouting new branches. Lu Yi could clearly sense that his body was undergoing some kind of earth-shattering transformation that he didn't understand. In these days, his appearance had gradually aged. He was clearly not even 20 years old, but if someone who didn't know him saw him, they would probably think he was 40 or 50 years old. Even his hair had turned snow-white. And now, the traces of time on his face were rapidly disappearing, and his snow-white hair had turned black again. His entire person was like the rising sun above the sea of clouds, once again full of vitality. He covered her mouth with her hand, completely unable to understand what was happening. Lu Yi also didn't understand. He never knew that Yi Liuli had such an ability. And as that inexplicable power flowed into Yi Liuli's body, Lu Yi suddenly felt as if this world had become incomparably close to him. Faintly, he had a clear insight. Liuli, what are you doing? Lu Yi asked in shock. Although the changes that were happening to his body were unimaginable, he could feel that Yi Liuli had paid an extremely heavy price. His origin energy was in deficit, and even the little fairy doctor was helpless. How could Yi Liuli replenish it? There was no way to explain what he was experiencing. 7017K. Chapter 737. An indescribable grief enveloped Lu Ye's body and mind. It felt as if he was about to lose something extremely important. This feeling didn't come from his heart, but from his identity as Sixth Yi. He wanted to pull his hand away, but he couldn't. Yi Liuli didn't use much strength to hold his hand, but their palms were tightly intertwined. Let go! Yi Lioli looked up at him, her small face full of tears, but she only shook her head gently, a smile on her face. Sixth brother, I can't hold on anymore. I'm very glad that I was able to wait for you. This is the last thing I can do for you. Sixth brother, you still have a long way to go. The flames enveloping the two of them slowly receded and gradually disappeared. As the flames dissipated, Yi Lioli's entire body became illusory and transparent. She got up and slowly turned around, looking at the rising sun. She sighed softly, full of nostalgia. The clothes on her upper body gently slid down, revealing a translucent and smooth back. Lu Yi looked up and narrowed her eyes. She saw that the birthmark on Yi Lioli's back had changed a little. At first glance, this birthmark looked like a centipede that was baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. Its appearance and shape were exactly the same as the heavenly ravine in the extreme north. It was just that the size was different. But at this moment, there were many mysterious patterns around the birthmark. These patterns were in accordance with the laws of nature, and when Lu Yi looked at them, he was greatly moved. This is... Lu Yi faintly saw through them. Yi Lioli's soft voice sounded. I believe that with sixth brother's ability, you should be able to do it. She suddenly turned her head and smiled. Sixth brother, thank you. As her words fell, her originally somewhat illusory body quickly became transparent, then turned into specks of light, floating between heaven and earth. Lu Yi took a step forward and reached out to grab her, but he grabbed nothing but air, leaving behind only her clothes that still had some residual warmth. Lioli! He also cried out in shock. Ever since Yi Lioli's body had undergone all kinds of strange changes, she had been at a loss. She had never thought that this little girl, who had been by Lu Yez and her side ever since they entered the dragon-soaring realm, would disappear from the world in such a way. What's going on with Lioli? What's going on? Yi turned to look at Lu Yi, her eyes suddenly widening in disbelief. Lu? The Lu Yi in his field of vision was no longer as old and feeble as before. Now he was full of vitality, and his white hair had turned back to black. His condition was better than ever. Just now, the flames had enveloped Lu Yi and Yi Lioli, so he hadn't been able to clearly see what had happened inside. After that, she had been distracted by Yi Lioli's various abnormalities, causing her to not notice the changes in Lu Yi. Until now, Lu Yi, have you recovered? Yi's voice trembled, afraid that what she saw was just an illusion. Yi Lioli's disappearance filled her heart with grief, but Lu Ye's sudden recovery filled her heart with joy. The two conflicting emotions collided in her heart, and for a moment, sorrow and joy surged up together, making it hard for Yi to control herself. Most of them were puzzled. Even the little fairy doctor was helpless against Lu Ye's situation. Who in this world could save Lu Yi? Although she had previously suggested for Lu Yi to find a way to return to the 9 provinces, she knew that with Lu Ye's situation, even if he really did return to the 9 provinces, the situation wouldn't be too optimistic. The huge deficit of one's origin was not something that could be solved with a high cultivation level. Recalling the various changes that had happened before, how could he not understand that Lu Ye's recovery was directly related to Yi Lioli's disappearance? She had all kinds of questions in her mind, but this was clearly not the time to ask. On Wangyang Peak, Lu Yi was holding the last proof of Yi Lioli's existence in this world. He never would have thought that this little girl who had always called him sixth brother would have such an unimaginable nature. He had never noticed this. It wasn't until Yi Lioli held his hand and channeled her gentle energy into his body to replenish his depleted source energy that he suddenly woke up from his stupor. Because along with that gentle power came many indescribable mysteries. Yi Lioli was not just the 7th princess of the tyrannical Saber Villa, nor was she 6th brother Ye's younger sister. Her other identity was the carrier of the will of the heavens and earth. No wonder the birthmark on Yi Lioli's back was exactly the same shape as the Sky Ravine. No wonder every time something happened at the Sky Ravine, it could be perfectly reflected on Yi Lioli's body. Because she was the carrier of the will of the dragon-soaring realm. Many things that he could not understand in the past were explained at this moment. Because he had activated the Dragon Emperor, his origin was in a huge deficit. Not to mention that the fairy doctor was helpless about this condition, Even if he really returned to the 9 states, no one would be able to save him. This was also the reason why he did not try to return to the 9 states. Because even if he really did return, it would only make second senior sister and the sect master sad. The only thing that could save him was the power of the same origin. For example, the origin of this world. The last of the origin of this world was sent into Lu Ye's body through Yi Lioli's hands, filling up his deficit and allowing Lu Yi to come back to life. Looking at it now, when Yi Lioli suggested leaving the Medicine Valley and going out to take a look, it was not for Lu Yi, but for herself. She had already made this plan long ago, and also knew that she did not have much time left, so she wanted to see the great rivers and mountains of this world before she left. In the end, she stopped here, unable to do her best. On the peak, the sun had already completely risen. Those intimate words of sixth brother seemed to still echo in her ears, but the petite figure that followed behind her like a shadow was no longer there. It turned out that she was going to travel alone next. "It's me." Lu Yi carefully kept Yi Lioli's clothes and called softly, "Yi, return to the Medicine Valley." Yi responded with a grunt. After a while, a stream of light set off from the sun-gazing peak, heading straight in the direction of the Medicine Valley. Along the way, Lu Yi told Yi everything he knew about Yi Lioli. There was no need for any secrets between the two of them. Compared to her, during this period of time in the dragon-soaring realm, Yi was the one who spent the most time with Yi Lioli. The two girls who were about the same age already had extremely deep feelings for each other. "Lioli is the carrier of the will of this world, then is she still Lioli?" Yi asked in a choked voice. "She is naturally her." The cultivators of the dragon-soaring realm did not know about the blood realm and the blood tribe before, but the will of this world should have known long ago. However, the will of this world is not a living creature, and does not have many thoughts and ideas. It only instinctively reacted when it sensed danger, so it carried its will on Yi Lioli, and was born with her. When Lu Yi swung that shocking saber at the bottom of the ravine, he clearly felt that this world had its own will. However, that will might not be clear, and was only in a hazy state, unable to make some judgments as clearly as a human. However, after choosing Yi Lioli as a carrier, and after being born and growing with her, Yi Lioli could do these things. For example, expending everything she had to save Lu Yi. Hence, Yi Lioli was Yi Lioli. Even if she carried the will of this world, her existence could not be denied. However, Lu Yi did not understand why Yi Lioli was chosen. This was the first time he had come into contact with such profound and mysterious things. In the end, he was only a mere Cloud River tier cultivator. Also, before Yi Lioli left, she said something that Lu Yi was very concerned about. She said that she had already waited for many years, and could not hold on much longer. Lu Yi had some vague guesses, but no one could explain them to him, and he could not help but feel regret. After hearing this, Yi's heart was filled with gratitude toward Yi Lioli, and there was also a lot of reluctance toward this little friend that she had not known for long. However, Yi Lioli had already made her choice, and the past was the past. In the medicinal valley, Huang Liang and Yuan Changzuan stood side by side, looking in the direction of the ravine. Yuan Changzun recounted the events of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, and Huang Liang's face was filled with anger as he listened. He gritted his teeth and said, "This bunch of ignorant things, they really deserve to die." They had been saved from the calamity of destruction, and their lives had been preserved. Not only did they not feel gratitude, they actually wanted to attack Lu Yi and seize the Dragon Emperor. Even if he had long known that people were unfathomable, when such a thing really happened, he could not help but feel angry. In this world, there were indeed many ingrates who did not have the right to live. Little friend Yi has suffered. Huang Liang sighed slowly. There is an end to suffering. Little friend should be free now. When he was in the tyrannical Saber Mountain Villa, he had observed Lu Ye's vitality. It was simply a candle in the wind that could be extinguished at any time. In his opinion, Lu Yi might not even be able to last a night in his situation. Now that 3 or 4 days had passed, Lu Yi was definitely no longer alive. Huang Liang's expression darkened when he heard this. In the end, soaring dragon, have let him down. If we can survive this great calamity, We will erect a monument for him so that future generations will remember little friend Ye's sacrifice for the world. Of course, Yuan Changsuan had no objection to this. The word, savior, had always only existed in legends. No one would have thought that one would appear in this era. It was a pity that this savior would not live long in the end. A stream of light rapidly approached from afar. Huang Liang and Yuan Changsuan did not pay much attention to it. There were many cultivators coming and going in the medicinal valley during this period of time, and they only thought that it was some cultivator returning from the ravine. After a hurried glance, the two of them were suddenly stunned, and they turned their heads again to look at the stream of light. Huang Liang's eyes widened, and his face was full of disbelief. Yuan Changsuan, a successful sword cultivator, also opened his mouth slightly, and the sound of a sword humming faintly came from his body, showing that his heart was not calm. The stream of light arrived in front of them in an instant, and the light dissipated, revealing two figures. Lu Yi stepped forward and saluted, "Greetings, seniors." Huang Liang pointed at Lu Yi. "You," he almost blurted out, "you're not dead?" He finally realized that it was not very polite to say that, but the shock in his heart made him unable to speak a complete sentence. 7017K. After all, he had never done it before. Even though Lu Yi said so, he wasn't completely sure. When this news spread, the entire cultivation world of Dragon Ascension was in an uproar. Following the summons of the three overlord sects, each of the sect's sect masters and sect masters led their formation cultivators and rushed towards the Medicine Valley. The name of the tyrannical Saber Mountain Manor's Yi Lu became known after the battle at the ravine. Lu Ye's identity as Dragon Ascension's savior aside, just the fact that he was the Dragon Emperor was enough to elevate him to the top of the cultivation world in Dragon Ascension. His attainments in the Tao of formations were unparalleled in both ancient and modern times, far surpassing the standards of the current Soaring Dragon's cultivation world. He was willing to try to end the crisis of the Soaring Dragon realm, so all the major sects would naturally cooperate unconditionally. "Lu Yi, everyone's here." Yi's voice came from outside the grass hut. In the grass hut, Lu Yi slowly opened his eyes, the light in his eyes fading away. It had been 2 days since he returned to the Medicine Valley. In just 2 days, the Soaring Dragon realm had already prepared everything. And these 2 days, he had been staying in the grass hut, comprehending some mysteries. Those mysteries came from Yi Lioli's final gift. Before this seventh sister of his disappeared, she once again revealed the birthmark on her back. But at that time, the appearance of the birthmark was not quite the same as what Lu Yi had seen before. There were obviously many more mysterious patterns around the birthmark. It involved some extremely profound secrets of the Array Tao. With Lu Ye's eyesight, he naturally wouldn't forget after seeing it. On the way back to the Medicine Valley, he had also been comprehending the mysteries contained in those patterns. This gave him the confidence to say those words to Huang Liang and Yuan Changsuan. His cultivation in formation Tao did indeed surpass the entire Soaring Dragon realm, but even he couldn't completely solve the crisis of Dragon Ascension with his own strength. But with the help of Yi Lioli's final gift, this impossible could be realized. Long before the bloody battle at Heavenly Ravine began, Lu Yi had asked the fairy doctor a question. If the clothes were torn, they could be mended. But if the sky was torn, how could they mend it? At that time, he realized that the ultimate goal of his trip to the Soaring Dragon realm was to mend the sky. All this time, he didn't have a clear clue until the last time he saw Yi Lioli's birthmark. His seventh sister's body carried the will of heaven and earth. The additional patterns on the birthmark were the evolution and deduction of the will of heaven and earth itself. It was the source of the ability to mend the sky. After all, the Soaring Dragon realm had an era where there were divine ocean realm cultivators. The current cultivators seemed to have forgotten the glory of that era, but heaven and earth itself would not forget. This was also the reason why the will of heaven and earth could deduce the method of mend the sky. But with Lu Ye's current cultivation, if he wanted to turn this confidence into a method, it was far from enough to rely on his own strength. He needed to borrow the power of the entire Soaring Dragon realm. Walking out of the grass hut, there was already a sea of people outside. Pairs of eyes gathered. When they saw Lu Yi, they all bowed in unison. Even people like Huang Liang, Yuan Changsuan, and Guang Jing were no exception. This was their respect for his previous bloody battle at Heavenly Ravine. Lu Yi returned the greeting. His gaze swept across and slightly glanced at the fairy doctor who was standing at the side. This woman was very problematic. At first sight, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong. Not only did she have Hua Xi's face, but even her voice and tone were almost the same. When he returned 2 days ago and saw the fairy doctor again, she was not surprised at all. It was as if she already knew that Lu Yi could come back from the dead. She only used a tone that Lu Yi was very familiar with to tease him. "You're still alive?" It made Lu Yi think that he had really met Hua Xi. Although he was sure that there was something wrong with her, Lu Yi could also be sure of another thing. This woman was not a threat. If she was, he and Yi Liuli would have died long ago. Putting away the thoughts in his heart, Lu Yi said, "Today, I invited all of you here for only one thing. How to solve the crisis of the soaring dragon realm. Over the past few days, I believe that all of you are already aware that although we have won the battle with the Blood Clan, as long as we don't break free from the dependence of the Blood World, Long Ting will not be at peace. Sooner or later, the Blood Clan will make a comeback. When that time comes, with Long Teng's current strength, it is especially clear whether we can stop the Blood Clan." Although there were many cultivators, they all listened quietly. No one interrupted. When Lu Ye's voice fell, Huang Liang said, "Little friend Yi, since we are here, we will believe you unconditionally. If you have a good plan, please don't hesitate to enlighten us. The entire Soaring Dragon Realm will cooperate with you wholeheartedly." Yuan Changsuan also nodded. "That's right. At this moment of life and death, this old man believes that the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm can work together to overcome the difficulties." Many of the cultivators below chimed in. Lu Yi nodded in satisfaction. "In that case, this Yi will not decline. If we want to solve the crisis of the Soaring Dragon Realm, there is only one way. Let the Soaring Dragon Realm break away from the attachment of the Blood Clan." After 800 years of attachment, the Soaring Dragon Realm has lost a lot of its foundation. 800 years ago, it still couldn't get rid of the attachment of the Blood Clan. Today, it is even more impossible. Therefore, what we need to do is to use manpower to support the heavenly might. Only then will we have hope of success. How can we use manpower to support the heavenly might? Someone couldn't help but ask. With the formation as the foundation, mobilize the power of heaven and earth. Lu Yi raised his hand, and immediately, the cultivators who were ready leaped forward and erected a huge jade board in front of him. The jade board was engraved with complicated patterns that were uneven and crisscrossed with each other. This was the topographic map of the entire Soaring Dragon Realm. The uneven areas were mountain peaks and valleys, and the crisscrossing areas were large rivers. This was also what he had instructed the Imperial Heavenly Sect to create. Lu Yi raised his hand and pressed on the jade board. He activated his spiritual power, and in an instant, 64 light spots lit up on the jade board. The 64 light spots were distributed all over the Soaring Dragon Realm. If these light spots were connected together, they would form a mysterious pattern that covered the entire Soaring Dragon Realm. "I need the fellow Taoists from the various provinces to build a large array formation platform at a designated location. I will teach you the layout and construction method of the large array formation platform later. You only need to follow the blueprint." The scene was silent for a long time. Everyone's eyes were attracted by the light spots on the jade board. Anyone could see that this was a huge project, one that had never been seen in the Soaring Dragon Realm since ancient times. If such a large formation was completed, it would definitely cover the entire Soaring Dragon Realm. Previously, when Lu Yi said that he wanted to use the formation as the foundation to mobilize the power of heaven and earth, they didn't quite understand. However, after seeing the scene in front of them, many people suddenly understood. If this was successful, it could indeed mobilize the power of the entire Soaring Dragon Realm to resist the attachment of the Blood Realm. As for whether there was a chance to break away from the Blood Realm, that would only be known when the time came. However, Such a large formation that covered the entire realm was not something that the cultivators of the Soaring Dragon realm could come up with. Moreover, even if it was successfully set up, who could activate such a formation? Even a reborn Divine Ocean Realm cultivator wouldn't be able to create such a large formation, right? The Titanium Temple will be responsible for building the formation platform in Gan Province. In the silence, Great Master Guangjing spoke with a loud voice. The Howren Academy will be responsible for the formation platform in Li Province. Yuan Changtsuan followed. Then the Imperial Heavenly Sect will be responsible for the platform in Yuan Province. As the three overlord sects spoke, the remaining sects responded one after another. However, their strength was not as strong as the three overlord sects, so several sects were responsible for one platform. In just a short moment, all 64 spell altars had been claimed. Brother Yi, what's the name of this platform? How should I address it? Someone below asked. Lu Ye's gaze was faint as he looked at the ravine in the extreme north. He said softly, Heaven Repairing Platform, 7017K. Chapter 739. The 64 heaven-mending platforms were claimed by the various sects in the world. News spread in all directions and many people left. But all the formation cultivators were left behind by Lu Yi. He had already passed down the method of creating and setting up the heaven-mending platform, but even so, with the attainments of the Soaring Dragon formation cultivators, it would not be easy for them to comprehend the intricacies. If they were left to their own devices, they might not succeed. The main reason they were left behind was to explain the difficulties. Lu Yi had to ensure that there would be no problems with the 64 heaven-mending platforms. 3 days later, all the formation cultivators left the Medicine Valley and scattered to various parts of the world. Lu Yi brought Yi and Hu Pe to the Sky Ravine. One of the 64 heaven-mending platforms was the main and the rest were auxiliary. The core and most important heaven-mending platform had to be built directly below the Sky Ravine. Lu Yi was personally in charge of it. In the past few days, the three overlord sects had sent the materials needed to build the heaven-mending platform. Many people were also stationed there, waiting for Lu Yi to take charge of the matter. The entire Soaring Dragon realm was in full swing. There were many cultivators roaming around the mountain ranges that were normally deserted, and huge spell platforms rose from the ground one after another. For the 64 heaven-mending platforms, the entire Soaring Dragon realm had used up all their resources. All the sects had opened their treasure vaults, allowing them to take all kinds of precious materials. This was the only way to ensure the progress of the heaven-mending platforms. It was Lu Ye's first time presiding over such a large-scale matter. Even with his identity as the savior of the Soaring Dragon realm, he still felt great pressure. Below the Sky Ravine, he almost did not sleep or rest. He poured all his energy into the heaven-mending platforms, making Yi's heart ache. Fortunately, Lu Yi was full of energy after receiving the world origin energy from Yi Lioli. Even though he was so tired, he did not feel tired at all. He displayed his attainments in Formation Dao to his heart's content. Back when he set up the formation in the Medicine Valley, it was to repay the little fairy doctor's medical expenses and also to verify what he had learned. How could it not be the same this time? Presiding over such a large-scale formation was of unimaginable help to his own Formation Dao attainments. There was still an enormous amount of information in his mind that had not been digested. It was a gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda. As the days passed, the heaven-mending platform rose at a speed visible to the naked eye. Good news came from all over the Soaring Dragon realm. Under the premise that the entire Soaring Dragon realm put aside their prejudices and sincerely cooperated, the heaven-mending platforms were successfully built one after another. In less than half a month, only the core heaven-mending platform that Lu Yi was in charge of was left. During this time, neither the Blood World nor the Blood Race made any moves. Not to mention the Blood Realm, Lu Ye's shocking slash had weakened the Blood Realm's attachment to the Dragon Ascension. This made it extremely difficult for the Blood Race to descend to the Dragon Ascension. Last time, the Heavenly Gorge sect had set up a Blood River Grand formation to guide them. This time, however, there was no one to guide them. Even if the world was left to its own devices, It would not be easy for the blood breeds to descend upon dragon ascension. Therefore, for the time being, there was no need to worry about the threat of the blood breeds. On this day, the sun shone brightly and the blue sky was clear. Beneath the ravine, Lu Yi sat on the heaven-mending platform. This core heaven-mending platform had finally been completed the day before yesterday. Everything was ready, and all that was left was to activate the power of the spirit array. Across the world, on each of the heaven-mending platforms, there were 2 or 3 people at the very least, 4 or 5 at the very most, all of them at the 9th order Cloud River realm. Each of them had a solemn and pious look on their faces, their eyes closed in meditation, ensuring that they were in their best condition. At a certain moment, Lu Yi suddenly opened his eyes as the sound transmission stone in his hand vibrated. He put the sound transmission stone to his ear and listened carefully before putting it away and standing up. The time has come. Looking up at the huge ravine above his head, Lu Yi whispered softly, "Please lend me a hand." As soon as these words fell, Lu Yi took a step forward and arrived at the center of the heaven-mending platform, pouring his spirit chi madly into it. It was as if a stone had been thrown into a calm lake. With him as the center, a layer of ripples began to spread out. As the ripples spread out, lines of lines lit up. These were the lines of the formation engraved on the heaven-mending platform. The light came from the bottom of the platform, and like a prairie fire, it quickly spread in all directions and continued to spread downwards. Not far away, many cultivators were watching. Seeing the complex runes appear on the heaven-mending platform and the brilliant light, they could not help but cheer. They did not know if the rest of the process would be smooth, but from the looks of it, today's matter was off to a very good start. When the entire heaven-mending platform lit up, a large number of spirit stones placed inside it were quickly consumed. As such, even though it was a grand display, Lu Ye's consumption of energy wasn't too serious. The energy he used was at most a catalyst. The real consumption of energy came from the spirit stones that were placed in the heaven-mending platform. Dong. A dull sound suddenly came from the heaven-mending platform, as if a huge heart was beating. When the sound rang out, the expressions of many cultivators who were watching could not help but change slightly, and they could not help but raise their hands to cover their chests. Along with the sound, an invisible force field spread rapidly in all directions with the heaven-mending platform as the center. In the blink of an eye, it spread thousands of miles away. On the heaven-mending platform in Gan Province, a few 9th Order Cloud River realm monks led by Great Master Guangjing sat with their eyes closed. Buddhist beads flowed on their fingertips as they chanted scriptures. When the invisible force spread through the heaven-mending platforms, Great Master Guangjing opened his eyes abruptly and shouted, "It's starting!" The monks who were already prepared channeled their spirit chi into the heaven-mending platforms they were sitting on. Soon, the heaven-mending platforms in Gan Province underwent the same changes as the heaven-mending platform where Lu Yi was. "It's starting!" On the heaven-mending platform in Li Province, Yuan Changsuan shouted, and the masters of Haoran Academy channeled their spirit chi together. "It's starting! It's starting!" The cultivators on the heaven-mending platforms scattered all over dragon-soaring continents soon sensed something and activated the power of the spirit arrays in the heaven-mending platforms. In an instant, invisible force fields spread out in all directions with the heaven-mending platforms as the center. In the beginning, the frequency of the spreading was not the same. After all, the cultivators on the heaven-mending platforms activated the heaven-mending platforms at different times. However, as time passed, the invisible force fields seemed to have undergone some miraculous resonating changes. In less than half an hour, the force fields of all the heaven-mending platforms had reached a perfect synchronization. At the intersection of the invisible force fields, a mysterious spirit array that enveloped the entire dragon-soaring realm was formed. Others could not detect these changes, but Lu Yi, who was in charge of the core heaven-mending platform, could see them clearly. He took a deep breath. Success or failure, it all depended on this move. Even though he had done everything he could not help but feel uneasy at this moment. "Rise!" On the heaven-mending platform, Lu Yi shouted. As soon as he spoke, the world hummed. Lu Ye's mind once again ascended infinitely, but this time, The feeling was not quite the same as when he was wearing the dragon throne. When he was wearing the dragon throne, he suddenly received an extremely powerful external assistance. This external assistance exceeded the limits of what his body could endure, allowing him to view everything around him with a state of mind that far exceeded his own foundation. This increase was even more terrifying than the last time. In a daze, Lu Ye's mind seemed to cover the entire dragon soaring realm. He could clearly sense the location of every heaven-mending platform. All was silent. Time silently flowed through his mind. It was as if the entire world had stopped. However, he knew that this was not because time had stopped, but because his mind had already transcended the restraints of heaven and earth. His strength was naturally far from reaching such an inconceivable level. The reason he could reach this level was all thanks to Yi Lioli's final gift. What she had given Lu Yi was the origin energy of this world. This wondrous power not only made up for Lu Ye's deficiency and allowed him to come back from the dead, it also allowed him to mobilize the power of this world to the extent that he could. If the power of heaven and earth was compared to a sharp sword, then the origin energy that Yi Lioli gave Lu Yi was the hilt of this sword. He held the hilt of the heaven and earth sword in his hand and wielded the power of this world. Before building the heaven-mending platform, many cultivators in the dragon-soaring realm had a doubt. Even if such a shocking array that covered the entire dragon-soaring realm was divided into 64 platforms, who could activate it? Even the legendary rebirth of a divine sea realm cultivator did not have this ability. Indeed, a divine sea realm cultivator did not have this ability. Lu Yi did. Strictly speaking, only Lu Yi, who was in this realm, had this ability. When the heaven and earth sword of the dragon-soaring realm was wielded, the entire realm hummed. Lu Yi returned to his senses and looked up at the ravine above his head. His sharp gaze seemed to be able to penetrate the barrier between the two realms and see where the blood realm was. Scram! An angry roar spread throughout the realm. It was the wrath of heaven and earth. As the voice fell, the entire dragon-soaring realm shook violently. The mysterious array formed by the invisible fields mobilized the power of heaven and earth at this moment, turning into an invisible impact that blasted into the ravine. Boom! A muffled sound rang out in the depths of the hearts of all living beings. At this moment, the dragon-soaring realm seemed to have a life of its own and shook violently. For a time, the dragon-soaring realm shook everywhere. Many of the mortals who did not know what was going on prostrated themselves on the ground, praying for heaven's protection. Although the cultivators of the cultivation world knew what was happening at this time, they did not expect such a huge movement. Before they could come back to their senses, another buzzing sound came. The world trembled. The third time, the fourth time, as if doomsday had arrived, the dragon-soaring realm's heaven and earth changed. Dormant volcanoes erupted, great waves swept across the great rivers, and tsunamis filled the sky above the sea. On the core heaven-mending platform, Lu Yi stared fixedly at the ravine across the ravine, constantly activating the power of the array and adjusting the power of heaven and earth. His mood was unprecedentedly tense and dignified, because he was mobilizing the power of heaven and earth to resist the attachment of the blood realm, putting aside the pressure he had to bear for the time being. If he could not end the battle quickly, a huge disaster would erupt in the entire dragon-soaring realm. At that time, it was unknown whether the blood realm could escape, but the dragon-soaring realm would definitely be destroyed first. 7017K. Chapter 740. The power of the 64 heaven-mending platforms was released at the same time, and the invisible force field crisscrossed, covering the entire domain. The momentum of heaven and earth was mobilized, and the entire domain seemed to have its own life, shaking its body vigorously. Every time it shook, it would cause the entire soaring dragon realm to tremble, and strange phenomena would occur. The first few times there was no obvious effect. But since the fifth time, Lu Yi could clearly feel that the unfamiliar aura coming from the heavenly gully had become weaker. It was effective. That unfamiliar aura was the aura of the blood realm. The blood realm was attached to the soaring dragon realm, devouring the origin and foundation of the soaring dragon realm. The unique aura of the blood realm was transmitted from the heavenly gully. Now that the aura of the blood realm had become weak, it undoubtedly meant that all the previous efforts were working. Lu Yi did not dare to be negligent. He held his breath and continued to mobilize the momentum of heaven and earth. The 6th time, the 7th time, after a total of 9 times, when the entire soaring dragon realm was about to fall apart and had reached its limit, Lu Ye's eyes were like lightning, looking into the depths of the heavenly gully. He seemed to be able to see a huge monster flying out, quickly leaving the soaring dragon realm. The aura of the blood realm at this moment was extremely weak, almost undetectable, and even this weak aura was quickly dissipating. Success. If the blood realm was compared to a leech attached to a human body, then this evil bug had been broken free by the soaring dragon realm. But it was only half successful. Although the blood realm was broken free, the wound of the heavenly gully still existed. If he wanted to rely on the power of the soaring dragon realm to heal it, who knows how long it would take. If this wound was not repaired quickly, the blood realm could still follow the aura of the soaring dragon realm, and all his efforts would be in vain. Fortunately, Lu Yi was prepared. On the heaven-mending platform, the wind whistled, and Lu Ye's clothes and black hair fluttered. He looked at the heavenly gully above his head, and slowly raised his hands. He was clearly not holding anything up, but his whole body seemed to be under great pressure. The movement of raising his hands was extremely difficult, and there were bursts of flesh and blood-bursting sounds coming from all over his body. His 7 orifices were bleeding, and his spiritual power and blood were boiling. Little by little, inch by inch, he pushed his hands in the direction of the heavenly gully. What he pushed was not his own strength, but the foundation of the entire soaring dragon realm. Heaven! It was just 2 words, but it took all of Lu Ye's strength to shout them out. This was because after Yi Liuli gave him the origin of this world, he had already seen through the truth of this world, and could clearly see through every living being in this world. Among all the living creatures, the little fairy doctor was the most unique. If he really had to describe her, she seemed out of place with the entire soaring dragon realm, as if she was not a living creature of the soaring dragon realm. In fact, she was indeed not a living creature of the soaring dragon realm. Her identity was also confirmed at this moment. Even though Lu Yi had already guessed it, he was still shocked to the extreme. It's really spectacular. The little fairy doctor looked up at the array diagram next to the heavenly ravine. I didn't expect you to really do this. I didn't do my best, Lu Yi replied indifferently. In the end, I didn't see the end. The little fairy doctor pursed her lips and smiled. What's so important about seeing the end? It's just a possibility. So, this matter still won't succeed in the end? Lu Yi asked. Not being able to see the end result was actually a result, because even if the heaven mending was successful at this moment and the heavenly ravine disappeared, the blood realm would still not give up so easily. 800 years ago, when the soaring dragon realm was at its peak, it was still attached to the blood realm. Now that it had lost a lot of its foundation, how could it resist? Even if it could get rid of it for a while, it could not get rid of it forever. Lu Yi had thought about this before, but he still did his best for the heaven-mending matter. Because only when he did his best could it be up to fate. This possibility is enough. Lu Yi was silent. He obviously did not agree with this statement. He had worked so hard for so long and paid so much, but in the end he could not even see the end result. Naturally, he was unwilling. But at this moment, whether he was willing or not was meaningless, because time and space could not be reversed. No one could stop what had happened in the past. What really happened in the soaring dragon realm during this time period? Lu Yi asked. Do you want to see? Can I see? Lu Yi was surprised. He was just asking casually because he was unwilling to accept the end result, but he did not expect to get such an answer. Others naturally can't see it, but you are different. If you want to see it, you can see it yourself. The little fairy doctor's words were confusing. But Lu Yi only pondered for a moment and suddenly understood. The origin of heaven and earth. Yi Liuli gave him the origin of heaven and earth, so he could come back from the dead, so he could see many things that he could not before. For example, the little fairy doctor's uniqueness. For example, this world had actually been destroyed long ago. An elder fled in panic in the direction of the Medicine Valley, pursued by a large group of Heavenly Ravine sect cultivators. In the Medicine Valley, a young man with a long sword on his back brought his younger sister to seek medical treatment. 7017K. Chapter 741. The old man being chased was the sect master of the Imperial Heaven sect, Huang Liang. He was no different from the Huang Liang that Lu Yi saw. After all, Huang Liang looked the same in this time period. However, the fairy doctor did not look like Hua Si in the Medicine Valley. She was a middle-aged woman with a gentle temperament. She was neither good-looking nor ugly. The sixth young master of the domineering Saber Mountain Villa who brought his seventh sister to seek medical treatment was not Lu Yi. Instead, he was a young man with a resolute expression and burning hatred in his eyes. Yi Liuli's illness was not like what Lu Yi knew. She was born with a deficiency, so she had been plagued with illness since young. She did not have a birthmark on her back that looked like a centipede or a ravine. This was the truth of the Soaring Dragon Realm. And this time period was when the calamity of the Soaring Dragon Realm was about to begin. Fa Hua and Lu Tianyi died in battle under the ravine. They fought to the death and sent Huang Liang out of danger before they died, allowing him to survive. In Lu Ye's experience, he happened to have set up a shocking formation in the Medicine Valley. Huang Liang escaped here and was saved by him. However, the elders of the Heaven Ravine sect gathered outside the Medicine Valley. Zhuang Bufan activated the power of the Dragon Throne and released the last light of his life. Then, Lu Yi obtained the Dragon Throne. This was what he experienced in the space-time silhouette. In the real Soaring Dragon Realm, what happened at this time period was not much different from what he experienced. The only difference was that the real Yi Lu did not understand formations. Naturally, there was no such powerful formation in the Medicine Valley. Huang Liang escaped until now. It was Zhuang Bufan who stood up and killed the enemies. Then, Yi Lu's luck was great and he was recognized by the Dragon Throne. After that, what happened in the Soaring Dragon Realm was not the same as what Lu Yi experienced. The Blood Clan was guided by the Blood River formation set up by the Heaven Ravine sect and descended on the Soaring Dragon Realm. The cultivators of the Soaring Dragon Realm fought with their lives, but they were no match for them. At the crucial moment, Yi Lu put on the Dragon Throne and summoned the Dragon Ridge Saber that was sealed under the Vajra Temple's tower. He killed many Blood Clan cultivators under the ravine and finally turned the tables. However, after that battle, Yi Lu died because his origin energy was depleted. What followed was a bloody battle between the cultivators of the two worlds that lasted for several years. Under normal circumstances, the Soaring Dragon cultivators were definitely no match for the guests from the Blood Realm. However, in every major battle, the Dragon Emperor would appear. One by one, the Dragon Emperor Lords stepped forward, burning their own lives to delay the destruction of the Dragon Ascension Realm. However, the Soaring Dragon Realm was fighting against an existence like the Blood Realm after all. The secret techniques of the Blood Race cultivators had an extremely strong corrosive effect on the spirituality of spiritual weapons. In the many battles, the Dragon Emperor's spirituality had also been corroded, and her power had gradually decreased. In the final battle, a Blood Kindred expert brought a treasure from the Blood Realm. While perishing together with the Dragon Emperor, he also severely injured the Dragon Emperor. After this battle, the cultivation world of Dragon Ascension no longer had any room to resist. The blood breeds invaded without restraint, and the entire Dragon Ascension was in deep water. Time flowed by, and no one knew how many years had passed. Draconic Ascension's vitality was dim, and its foundation was almost completely depleted. All the living humans had been captured by the Blood Race and turned into their blood food. The Blood World had also left, leaving behind a devastated land. In the history of the Soaring Dragon Realm, everything that happened during this period was magnificent. In the face of the apocalypse, there was no savior. What awaited the Soaring Dragon Realm was only a bitter struggle and the gradual pain of destruction. What Lu Yi had experienced was, after all, just another possibility in that space-time silhouette. It was not the real situation. At this moment, what was imprinted in his eyes was a lifeless and extremely barren world. The entire world was silent, without any life, and without the spiritual chi of heaven and earth. It was as if the entire world had died. This was the current situation of the soaring dragon realm. When Lu Yi came back to his senses, he was no longer standing on the hundreds of feet tall heaven-mending platform. Instead, he was standing on a barren mountain without any vegetation, only gravel and sand swirling in all directions. Witnessing the destruction of a world with his own eyes had an unimaginable impact on Lu Ye's mind. In the end, he was only a cloud river cultivator. He had never imagined that he would have such a bizarre experience one day. Last time in the realm of beasts, he had not experienced such a thing. At that time, he had only cooperated with other cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance to solve the source of the beast disaster in the realm of beasts. Now that he thought about it, the real realm of beasts was very likely like this. Endless sorrow rose in his heart, but it also gave him a lot of insight. Cultivators were so insignificant compared to the world. If the world could perish, it was even more unworthy of the cultivators in it. He took out the dragon throne from his storage space and found that the dragon throne, which had been in good condition before, was now full of holes and had lost much of its spirituality. It was obviously no longer useful. The reality of the soaring dragon realm was that it had already been destroyed. The reality of the dragon throne was the same. Although he had obtained the dragon throne in that time silhouette and activated its power, that was only a reenactment of the heavens through means he could not understand. The real dragon throne had been severely damaged in the process of fighting the soaring dragon realm cultivators against the blood tribe. Even the blood-red dragon ridge saber's divine light was restrained. Its surface was dark, and there were many cracks on the blade. He put the dragon throne away again. Although this divine item was damaged and in a state where it could no longer be used, it was still a divine item. If he met the highly skilled Yenshur in the future, perhaps he could try to repair it. The Divine Sea Realm cultivator of the Thousand Secrets Pavilion should be very interested in this item. The fairy doctor, who looked like Hua Si, still stood beside him with a calm expression. "What's the matter with Lu Li?" Lu Yi asked. He had basically figured out everything about the soaring dragon realm. He even had some guesses about the identity of the woman beside him. But he did not dare to say, nor did he dare to ask. Some things were better left unsaid. It might not be a good thing to poke the truth. Only Yi Liuli he was not sure about. During this time in the soaring dragon realm, there was a person called Yi Liuli. But after Yi Lu died in battle, Yi Liuli quietly passed away. She died silently. In the end, it was the fairy doctor who had her medicine boy bury her in the Medicine Valley. It could be said that in the history of the soaring dragon realm, Yi Liuli did not play any role in changing the situation. At the very least, Yi Lu still carried the destiny of heaven and earth. He wore the dragon throne and helped the soaring dragon realm cultivators win the first war against the blood tribe. The essence of Lu Li that you encountered. The fairy doctor pondered for a moment. It can be considered the last remaining source of heaven and earth. It is also an obsession. Heaven and earth also have obsessions. Lu Yi was surprised. Since a will is born, it will naturally produce obsessions. Lu Yi understood. So her obsession is that if the soaring dragon realm had a savior-like figure back then, perhaps there would be a different future and we would not have to suffer the fate of destruction? Exactly. The fairy doctor nodded. I see. Lu Yi had thought of one thing before. The broken transmission formation that led to the soaring dragon realm's secret realm was a test in the field of formations. Only the person who repaired the transmission formation was qualified to set foot in the soaring dragon realm's secret realm. Because only such a person would have extremely high attainments in formations and be able to carry out the final plan of patching the heavens. Now it seemed that it was indeed so. This was also the reason why the transmission formation was located near the 100 Formation Pagoda. Those who came and went from the 100 Formation Pagoda were all formation cultivators. Only formation cultivators with extremely high attainments in formations could take on such a great responsibility. After Lu Yi repaired the transmission formation and entered the secret realm, his various performances gained the recognition of the remaining source of heaven and earth. That was why Yi Liuli gave him the source of heaven and earth on Wangyang Peak. Lu Yi did not let her down. The 64 heaven-patching platforms urged the power of heaven and earth and broke away from the attachment of the blood realm. The heaven-patching array had appeared, but the final result was not revealed. Because the obsessions of heaven and earth had found their own answer, the final result was no longer important. But after all, a silhouette was only a silhouette. In the real history of the soaring dragon realm, there was no such person as Lu Yi. Naturally, it could not avoid the fate of destruction. But the obsessions of the will of heaven and earth had been relieved. This part of the world is yours. The fairy doctor suddenly said something shocking. Mine. Lu Yi was stunned. Even though Lu Yi felt that the connection between this world and himself had become incomparably close when he obtained the last source of heaven and earth, a world belonging to him was still something that shocked him to an unimaginable degree. Moreover, what use did he have for this broken world without any vitality? The last source of heaven and earth is in your body, so naturally it is yours. The fairy doctor smiled gently. Lu Ye's heart stirred. Is there hope for this world to recover? I don't know. Maybe it is, but it depends on how hard you work. Lu Yi suddenly understood. He still had to increase his cultivation. He was only in the Cloud River tier. Even if he really had a way to recover this world, it was not something a Cloud River tier could come into contact with. Then, let's meet again if fate allows. As the fairy doctor spoke, her figure suddenly dissipated, turning into specks of light. Her departure was extremely abrupt. Lu Yi hurriedly raised his hand. How do I leave this place? How could there be any response? This inevitably made Lu Yi angry. Yi and Hupo's figures suddenly appeared beside him. Ling and Hupo appeared extremely flustered. Lu Yi and Yi hurriedly rushed over, grabbing Lu Ye's arm as if they were afraid they would lose him. Previously, one spirit and one tiger had clearly been observing the movements of the great heaven-patching formation. In the end, in the blink of an eye, the surrounding scenery had suddenly changed. They had appeared on a barren mountain without any vitality, and there was no sign of Lu Yi anywhere. What made them even more frightened was that they could not walk out of this small mountain no matter what. Just as they were at a loss, they raised their heads and saw Lu Ye's figure. Hupa scurried to Lu Ye's chest, using both claws to pull open Lu Ye's lapel and burrowed in. Only his eyes were exposed, vigilantly looking outside. He had never experienced such a bizarre thing. It really scared him to death. Chapter 742. On the barren mountain, Lu Yi comforted Yi with a few words, which calmed her down. With Lu Ye's explanation, she gradually understood the current situation. So, the dragon soaring realm has long been destroyed, and what we experienced was just an illusion? It's not wrong to say it's an illusion. It's more like history repeating itself. Is Lioli really formed by the last will of dragon soaring realm? There is a person called Yi Lioli in the history of Soaring Dragon. However, the Yi Lioli we met was different from the real her. The Lioli we met carried the last remnant of the origin of this world, and was also the will of this world that has yet to dissipate. He asked many more questions, and Lu Yi tried his best to answer them. In the end, a complicated expression appeared on Yi's face. That's good. At least, everything you did was seen by this world. Should be very happy in the end, so she gave her power to you. Ever since Yi Lioli disappeared from this world, Yi's mood hadn't been very good. Only now did she untie the knot in her heart. Lu Yi couldn't help but think of the last words Yi Lioli said on Wangyang Peak. She said that she had been waiting for a long time, and could not hold on any longer. From the looks of it, the will of this world had been holding on bitterly during the years of Dragon Ascension's destruction, all for the sake of witnessing the possibility that would appear at an unknown time. Fortunately, she saw it in the end. Putting away the many thoughts in his mind, Lu Yi turned and looked around. The trip to the dragon soaring realm was over, but how to leave this place? The fairy doctor definitely knew the way to leave. Even to her, bringing him out of this ruined world was as easy as lifting a finger. But she didn't do that, and instead deliberately left him here. So, the way to leave was hidden in this world. Or rather, it was hidden in the last source that Yi Lioli gave him. It seemed that he had to rely on himself. On the mountain top, wind and sand swept through, and the environment was terrible. Lu Yi led Yi and Hupa down the barren mountain, found a suitable place at the foot of the mountain, and opened up a cave to hide the wind and dust. Sitting cross-legged, Lu Yi silently sensed his own body. Ever since Yi Lioli gave him the last remnants of the origin of heaven and earth, he had been busy with the plan to mend the heavens. Occasionally, he would comprehend the mysteries within, but he had never delved too deeply into it. Now that he no longer had to worry about Long Ting, he could calm down and comprehend the mysteries contained within this mysterious power. Time passed. Lu Yi sat there motionless. Even though it had been some time since he had obtained the origin source, Lu Yi couldn't tell what kind of power it was. It didn't improve its cultivation, nor did it increase the power of its spirit. It didn't even give itself more means to kill enemies and protect itself. However, Lu Yi could still feel that this power existed within his body. It was omnipresent, yet he could not activate it, see it, or touch it. And by relying on this source, his connection with the dilapidated soaring dragon realm was also incomparably close. The fairy doctor said that this world was his, and it sounded like there was nothing wrong with saying that they were here to scare people. With the origin returning to the body, the world already had a master. As he comprehended the origin energy, Lu Yi even felt that he could do anything in this world with just a thought. Of course, the premise was that the remaining power of this world could support his thoughts. So even if he felt something in his heart, he didn't rashly try anything. Because the soaring dragon realm was already dilapidated. If he rashly squeezed out its power, he was afraid that it would really fall apart. A dilapidated world was still a world. There might be some way to restore it in the future. If it really fell apart, then he would be letting down Yi Lioli's last trust. He continued to comprehend. Suddenly, he saw a ball of light that was so dark that it was almost extinguished. The last remnants of the soaring dragon realm's origin. The moment he saw this ball of light, Lu Yi knew its essence. This was the origin that Yi Lioli had given him. Even though Long Teng's current situation was right in front of him, and Lu Yi knew that the situation of its origin wouldn't be too good, when he saw the origin, Lu Yi was still shocked. The light was only like the brilliance of a firefly, flickering and almost undetectable. Perhaps the last remnants of the soaring dragon realm's origin weren't so bad, but after countless years of waiting, coupled with the continuous dilapidation of the soaring dragon realm itself, it naturally deteriorated slowly. The strength of the origin was directly related to the prosperity and desolation of the world itself. The more prosperous the world was, the stronger the origin. With Long Teng's current situation, it was already fortunate that a trace of its origin was preserved. Naturally, he couldn't ask for too much. Moreover, this origin should have been preserved by relying on the secrets of Jojo. Otherwise, it would have dissipated long ago. Looking at this ball of origin, Lu Yi understood. Only at this moment could he be considered the true master of the soaring dragon realm. If the soaring dragon realm was compared to a house, then this ball of origin was the key to opening the door of this house. Lu Yi had the key in his pocket for a long time, but he couldn't take it out. Now that he could take out the key, he could naturally enter and leave this realm at will. This also meant that Lu Yi could leave this realm at any time. It's not as difficult as I thought. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows slightly. No wonder the little fairy doctor ignored him when she left. It seemed that she had long been sure that he could see through the mystery. Suddenly, Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. If he could enter and exit the soaring dragon realm at will, wouldn't that mean that he would have a place to hide when he encountered any danger that was difficult to resist in the future? If that was the case, then he would need to be wary of being hunted down. When there was danger, he could hide in the soaring dragon realm and come out when there was no danger. What good could the myriad Devil Ridge do to him? However, he also had to be on guard against others blocking his way. Moreover, how would he know that the danger outside had passed? This was also a big problem. Maybe when he left the soaring dragon realm, he would encounter a strong enemy squatting in the same place. If such a thing really happened, then it would be troublesome. Lu Yi thought so in his heart, but he could feel that his idea might not be able to be realized. Because what he imagined was the ideal situation, there must be many things that he had not noticed at the moment. Although he had found a way to leave this realm, Lu Yi did not leave immediately, because he had not fully recovered yet. When entering from one place to another, Lu Yi tried his best to maintain his perfect state. This was a good habit that he had cultivated all along. He had entered the Soaring Dragon realm from the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. If he guessed correctly, he would return to that place after leaving the Soaring Dragon realm. And before that, a large group of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had been chasing after him. After such a long time, he did not know what was going on in the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, he still had to be on guard. When he was mending the sky, he had endured too much pressure. There were already some internal injuries in his body, and his body had been seriously exhausted. He had not fully recovered yet. If the dragon throne was not damaged, he would not be afraid. With the dragon throne on his body, no matter how many people from the myriad Devil Ridge came, they could not do anything to him. However, the dragon throne had long been damaged in the real history. Before it was repaired, there was no way to use it to fight the enemy. As he recuperated, he observed the Soaring Dragon realm's origin. This kind of origin power, even if extremely weak, could not only allow him to freely enter and exit the Soaring Dragon realm. He wanted to pry into more mysteries from it. His mind slowly immersed in it. Lu Yi sensed his own insignificance. Even if it was a weak ball of origin power, it was still the remnant foundation of a world. It did not look very eye-catching on the outside, but for a Cloud River cultivator like Lu Yi, it was unimaginably grand inside. At this moment, Lu Yi felt like a newborn eagle that wasn't afraid of a tiger plunging into the vast starry skies. And he was that eagle that did not know the immensity of heaven and earth. As far as his eyes could see, the sky was filled with twinkling stars. There were countless of them, more than billions of them. Some of those stars were dim, some were bright, and all of them flickered, dazzling one's eyes. And when all these lights gathered together, it was the ball of origin power that was like the brilliance of a firefly. There was actually such a grand world inside the origin power. And what are these? Lu Yi looked at the unpredictable starlight and could not help but fall into deep thought. Although he had used the convenience of the Soaring Dragon realm's master to pry into the interior of this origin power, he could not figure out what these starlights were. Calmly sensing, he did not feel anything too mysterious from those starlights. Lu Yi controlled his mind and moved closer to a nearby starlight. The reason why he chose this one was naturally because this starlight was the brightest one nearby. Without any hindrance, his mind poured into that starlight. Immediately after, the world spun, his vision blurred, and a baby's clear crying sounded in his ears. There were weak moans of women, and there were also people cheering and running outside. It's born, master. Madam has given birth. A boy or a girl? Congratulations, master, it's a chubby boy. Ah, the heavens have not forsaken my Qin clan. My Qin clan finally has a descendant. Noisy voices entered his ears, making Lu Yi extremely confused. Where was this? What happened? He was clearly just prying into the starlight inside the Soaring Dragon realm's origin power. Why was it suddenly so chaotic? The baby's cries continued, and only then did Lu Yi realize it. He had become a baby. That's not right, he seemed to have possessed the body of a baby. He could feel the weakness and delicacy of this newborn body, but he had no way to control this body. In his current state, it was as if he was a bystander standing behind this baby, feeling everything that he could feel, seeing everything that he could see, but he could not control him. What was going on? Chapter 743. Almost as soon as Lu Ye's mind merged with the bright starlight, he, who was standing guard nearby, suddenly raised her head and looked at Lu Yi. It's happening again. Lu Ye's soul had disappeared again. What was left in front of her was only an empty shell that was still alive. This happened last time, and she and Hoopa were shocked. Only now did she know that Lu Ye's soul had left his body and entered the secret realm of Immortal Origin City. Then what about this time? She didn't see Lu Yi use the power of the breath fruit core, so where did his soul go? Hoopa softly howled from the side. It had obviously sensed something. Don't be afraid, Lu Yi will be back soon. Rather than comforting Hu Pei's words were more like self-comforting. Fortunately, she had experienced it last time, so she wasn't surprised. Although she was nervous, she wasn't as worried as last time. In that strange scene, Lu Ye's ears were still echoing with the cries of the newborn. It made him confused, and he didn't know what was going on. He had never experienced such a state before. It was as if he was leaning over the baby, feeling the same way as him, but he couldn't control him. He didn't seem to be aware of his own existence. The voice of the master outside sounded again. "Leave the stars, bright the sun and moon, let's take on the word Zhao." The master of this family was surnamed Qin, and the newborn baby was named Qin Zhao. Just as this thought appeared in Lu Ye's mind, the scene before him changed again. A teenager with red lips and white teeth knelt in front of his parents and kowtowed heavily. "Father, mother, this child will be leaving now. I can't be by your side to fulfill my filial piety. Please take good care of yourself in the future." This teenager was Qin Zhao, who had already grown up. In front of him, a dignified woman was crying, her eyes full of reluctance. She held Qin Zhao's hand, unwilling to let go. A middle-aged man closed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Don't worry about family matters. My Qin clan has been a merchant family for generations. Although we are extremely wealthy, we are still mortals. Now that you have the talent to cultivate, you will definitely walk a different path from our ancestors. When you go out, you must abide by your heart and do not cause trouble." Qin Zhao sniffled and replied, "I will remember father's words. When my cultivation is successful, I will come back to serve father and mother. Go." Patriarch Qin waved his hand lightly. Qin Zhao kowtowed 3 times before he got up and left. Outside the Qin manor, there was already a manservant waiting with a horse. The youth mounted the horse and from then on, he was free to fly. The scene changed again. Qin Zhao traveled all the way and finally arrived at the Law Refinement Pavilion. He participated in the Law Refinement Pavilion's disciple recruitment ceremony, passed the test, and successfully became a disciple. Since then, Qin Zhao displayed a natural talent and advantage that was difficult for his peers to reach on the path of cultivation, and it was unstoppable. Soon, he was valued by the upper echelons of the sect and nurtured with great effort. Many of the sect's secret techniques and manuals were open to him to their heart's content. However, the good times did not last long. The Law Refinement Pavilion was attacked by a rival sect and was destroyed. Qin Zhao escaped death and struggled to survive. Fortunately, his luck was not bad. He encountered an opportunity in the vast mountains and cultivated in seclusion. His cultivation increased day by day. When he reached the Spirit Sea realm and came out of seclusion, he avenged the blood of the elders of the sect. When he returned to the Qin manor, it was empty. The 2 elders of the family had passed away long ago and the family property was divided among the branches. Qin Zhao was heartbroken. He mourned in front of the graves of the 2 elders for 3 years and then founded the Law Refinement Pavilion. With his strong cultivation and great reputation, he quickly made the Law Refinement Pavilion the top sect in Soaring Dragon. He was also one of the top cultivators in Soaring Dragon. Until his lifespan was exhausted and he passed away. Scenes flickered and changed. The time period jumped without any pattern, but every change was an important point in Qin Zhao's life. Qin Zhao's magnificent and undulating life was presented completely and clearly in front of Lu Yi. And because of his special state, it was equivalent to him accompanying Qin Zhao through this life. Lu Yi also felt the many realizations Qin Zhao had during his cultivation. It was as if he was cultivating himself. Lu Yi slowly understood what he had experienced. This world, from ancient times to the present, had given birth to and perished countless living beings. The long river of history flowed. Even a sect with a long history might not be able to record things that were too ancient. Natural disasters and man-made disasters, the loss of inheritance, often led to the disappearance of many important records. People could not remember, but the world could. Every living being that had lived in this world would leave behind traces of their existence, or rather, imprints. The more powerful the living being, the more obvious the imprints left behind. Those imprints all existed in the origin of the world. That was to say, the stars in the sky that Lu Yi saw. Every bit of starlight corresponded to a certain time in the soaring dragon realm, a certain living being that had lived in this domain. The bright starlight that Lu Yi chose was a trace left behind by a powerful cultivator called Qin Zhao in a certain time period in the soaring dragon realm. He relied on his identity as the lord of the soaring dragon realm to peek into Qin Zhao's life, and almost accompanied him through the entire process of his life. Of course, the time spent was certainly not equal to Qin Zhao's lifespan. Qin Zhao was a great cultivator of the divine sea realm, and he had passed away naturally. His lifespan was at least 800 years. What Lu Yi experienced with him were some of the most important events in Qin Zhao's life. Because only these most important events that affected Qin Zhao's life could leave traces in such a long time, allowing Lu Yi to peek into them. Ordinary small things would not leave any traces. He witnessed the birth of a strong cultivator, his strength, and his death with his own eyes. This touched Lu Yi greatly. If it was just this, it would not do him any good. The key was that when he possessed Qin Zhao's body in that special state, he could feel everything he felt. In other words, if Qin Zhao had any special insights in cultivation, Lu Yi could also clearly see it. If he cultivated any secret techniques, Lu Yi could also smoothly master them. This was a great value. In this way, Lu Yi could effortlessly follow Qin Zhao to cultivate all the things he had mastered, such as the various secrets of the refining law pavilion. And this was just Qin Zhao. Since ancient times, how many heroes had been born in the soaring dragon realm? Inside the magnificent origin, there were endless stars twinkling. The brightness was not inferior to Qin Zhao's, and there were even many people who surpassed him. This was clearly a treasure trove that could be excavated at any time, a treasure trove that contained the essence of the entire soaring dragon realm from all eras. Realizing this, Lu Ye's heart became excited. Yi Liuli's gift seemed to be much more valuable than he had imagined. What he had obtained was definitely not just a dim origin of heaven and earth. The only thing that Lu Yi felt was a pity was that according to the division of cultivation schools in the 9 provinces, Qin Zhao was considered a spell cultivator, so even if Lu Yi had some gains this time, it would not be of much help to him. After all, he was a weapon cultivator who used the saber, and the spell cultivator could only be regarded as one of the schools that he cultivated on the side, and he had not put much effort into it. So far, the spells that he could perform were the Fire Phoenix and Fire Dragon, plus a few spiritual inscriptions on the talent tree. However, in the soaring dragon realm's many years of history, there was definitely no shortage of powerful weapon cultivators who used the saber. If he could find the traces left behind by them and comprehend the mysteries within, it would be much more useful than comprehending any saber cultivation experience. Those saber masters themselves were living saber cultivation experiences. Wouldn't their hands-on teaching be better than observing the words left behind? Moreover, because it was the first time he had experienced such a thing, Lu Yi only watched from the sidelines as the scenes rapidly changed and did not interfere in any way. However, he could feel that to a certain extent he could interfere with the flow of those scenes, and even make the scenes directly move forward or backward to a special time period. For example, when Qin Zhao cultivated a certain secret technique, if the time period was pushed to this time period, then Lu Yi could cultivate with Qin Zhao, and he could cultivate to whatever extent Qin Zhao could cultivate to. As all kinds of thoughts flashed through his mind, Lu Yi suddenly felt a great exhaustion sweeping over him. This was because the mental exhaustion was too great. He suddenly realized that doing this kind of thing also required him to consume some of his energy. It was understandable. Even if he was the master of the soaring dragon realm, even if the origin was hidden in his body, if he wanted to get something, he would have to pay something. It was time to leave. With a thought, Lu Ye's mind quickly separated from Qin Zhao's body and shuttled through the vast starry sky. Many bright and dim starlights flickered in his field of vision. The next moment, Lu Yi sensed the existence of his physical body. Lu Yi! His shout came into his ears. Lu Yi opened his eyes, and there was a faint look of fatigue in his eyes. After a little perception, he found that the situation was still okay. Although the mental exhaustion was serious, It was not to the extent of exhaustion. "How long has it been?" Lu Yi asked. In the process of possessing Qin Zhao, although he had accompanied him through the entire course of his life, he could feel that not much time had passed. "Almost 2 days," Yi replied. The last time Lu Yi entered the immortal Essence City, he was silent for 7 or 8 days. This time, he woke up after only 2 days, so Yi was not too flustered. "What happened?" Lu Yi slowly shook his head. "It's a little complicated. I'll tell you later." The situation was a little awkward. Originally, he wanted to recover completely and leave the dead soaring dragon realm, but he did not expect to be mentally exhausted and have to continue to recover. However, for Lu Yi, the recovery of the power of the mind was much easier than spiritual power, because he had soul water in his hands. Swallowing soul water for a long time was of great benefit to the growth of one's soul. This was also the reason why Lu Ye's soul was far superior to cultivators of the same level. Therefore, even if soul water was extremely valuable and rare, he would never be stingy in this kind of thing. No matter how good something was, it would only show its value when used at the right time. Blindly collecting it would not bring any benefits to oneself. Chapter 744. After swallowing a drop of soul water, Lu Yi completely recovered in less than half an hour. He slowly got up and called out to Yi and Hoop. Then he looked at the ruined dragon soaring realm. It was time to go. With a thought, ripples appeared in the void in front of him. Vaguely, a familiar aura spread out from the ripples. It was the aura of the Cloud River battlefield. What surprised Lu Yi was that he could see the situation outside through the layers of ripples. It was like a reflection on the water. What he saw was indeed the forbidden area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. It was the teleportation array that he had used to enter the dragon soaring realm. However, there were many figures sitting near the teleportation array. At a glance, there were at least a few hundred people. He saw a few familiar faces among them. Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and Chu Yun and Zhou Pei from the Sacred Fire sect who had chased him out of the Tianji city. These people surrounded the altar so tightly that not even a drop of water could pass through. He was afraid that once he showed himself, he would be attacked like a storm. Thieves will not give up on their desire to kill me. The thing that he was most worried about had happened. After all, the dragon soaring realm was only a mystery realm. Lu Yi also knew that he would leave this place sooner or later. Whether the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge would wait for him outside was also something that he had been worried about. Now, it seemed that he was right to be worried. He was really surrounded. Lu Ye's expression was cold. Moreover, how long had it been? He had stayed in the dragon soaring realm for at least 1.5 months. After such a long time, these people, they actually had the patience to wait here? Although he was angry, he also found it funny. He naturally understood that this was because of wealth. The bounty on his head was too big, and he was only a Cloud River realm cultivator. No matter whether they had a grudge against him, as long as the opportunity was right, they would naturally want to get a share of it. What made Lu Yi feel slightly relieved was that he could see the situation outside. The people outside seemed to be unable to see him, so the cultivators of the Myriad Demons Ridge did not have any abnormal reactions. However, there were a few people who seemed to be array cultivators who were studying the damaged teleportation array on the altar. It seemed that they wanted to repair the array. Unfortunately, with their array Dao attainments, it was naturally impossible. In this situation, if he rushed out rashly, the situation would not be good. However, if he did not go out, could it be that he could continue to hide in the soaring dragon realm? From the looks of it, the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators didn't seem like they were going to leave anytime soon. It was not impossible. Although the soaring dragon realm was in ruins, it would not affect his cultivation by consuming elixirs. With such thoughts in mind, he suddenly caught sight of a familiar figure amidst the crowd. Huaxia. She had actually come to the Cloud River battlefield. However, this was normal. Huaxia had long been qualified to become a Yunhe. The only reason she had not been promoted was because the environment of the Forest of 1,000 Poisons was too suitable for her cultivation. Thus, she had remained there to refine the power of the Forest of 1,000 Poisons. The last time he went to see her, the size of the forest of 1,000 poisons had been greatly reduced. After such a long time, the poison source in the forest of 1,000 poisons had probably been completely refined by her. Naturally, it was time for her to advance to the Cloud River realm. It was obviously not a coincidence that she would appear here. She must have heard some news about him. But looking at her current state, why? It seems like, was he captured? He did not encounter any harsh treatment. In the 9 prefectures, the cultivators of the 2 camps were at odds with each other. However, they had always maintained a tolerant attitude towards medical cultivators. Even if a medical cultivator was captured by an enemy, they would not kill him. They would even let the medical cultivator's family and friends pay some money to redeem him or her. This was also a treatment that only medical cultivators could enjoy. After all, everyone would ask medical cultivators for help. Moreover, there were not many medical cultivators in the 9 prefectures. If they really killed everyone they captured, it would not take many years for all the medical cultivators of the 2 camps to die out. At this moment, Hua Si was treating someone's injuries. Her body was surging with a green light that was full of vitality. Looking at the Myriad Devil Ridge and the surrounding terrain, Lu Ye gradually understood that a battle had broken out here. Outside the altar, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were restless. Sitting upright, Xia Liang's gaze was even gloomier. 1.5 months ago, Lu Ye had walked out of the 100 Formation Pagoda. He, Tan Xing, Chu Yun, Zhou Pei, and the others had all attacked together. In the end, they had not only failed to kill Lu Ye, but he had also escaped into the forbidden area and disappeared without a trace. After that, he had called upon the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge to work together to break the formations of the forbidden area. Even if they had to dig 3 feet into the ground, they were determined to find Lu Ye. There were many powerful formations in the forbidden area. Normally, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were not willing to trespass. However, when they learned that they were looking for Lu Ye, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge became interested. Working together, their progress was not slow. The formations that had been preserved for many years were broken one by one until they found the altar with a damaged teleportation formation. A strange altar had suddenly appeared in such a place. Obviously, it contained some kind of opportunity. After the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge checked, they confirmed that the formation on the altar had been activated recently. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, who else could repair a damaged teleportation formation and activate it besides Lu Ye? Therefore, Xia Liang and the others immediately concluded that the person who had activated the teleportation formation must be Lu Ye. As for where he had gone, no one knew. The place that such an altar was connected to must be a mystic realm. Lu Ye, who had a huge bounty on his head, or a mystic realm that contained an unknown opportunity. No matter which one it was, it could arouse the enthusiasm of the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Therefore, the formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge had been trying to repair the teleportation formation these days. Unfortunately, there was little progress. The actions of the Myriad Devil Ridge naturally could not be hidden from the cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance. When the news spread, many people from the Grand Heaven Alliance came to investigate. However, under the leadership of Xia Liang, Tan Xing, and the others, all the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were killed. The cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance who had come to covet the ship were defeated. Regardless of Lu Ye, the Myriad Devil Ridge was not willing to let the Grand Heaven Alliance touch the opportunity hidden in the altar. In the past month or so, the cultivators of the 2 sides had clashed several times. Fortunately, both sides restrained themselves and there were not many casualties. This was also the reason why Hua Si was in the captive room and treated the injuries of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. She had entered the Cloud River battlefield a month ago. As soon as she heard that something had happened to Lu Ye, she rushed here. Brother Xia, people's hearts are unstable. They probably won't be able to hold on for long. Tan Xing walked to Xia Liang's side and said softly. They hadn't seen Lu Ye for a month and a half, and there was no improvement in the repair of the array formation. Many of the Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators gathered here had already lost their patience. If they had the time, they might as well stroll around the Cloud River battlefield. Who knew, they might encounter a heaven-bestowed spirit lot or some other opportunity. The Cloud River battlefield did not lack all kinds of opportunities. Lu Ye only saw a few hundred people gathered here. Before this, there were more than a few thousand cultivators of the myriad Devil Ridge gathered here. There were only a few left because most people had lost their patience and left. If there was no further progress, the remaining few hundred people would probably disperse one after another. Mediocre people are not worthy of discussion. Don't bother with them. Xia Liang snorted. If they didn't have the patience, what qualifications did they have to covet the huge bounty on Lu Ye's head? In order to kill Lu Ye, he had forcibly delayed his breakthrough to the true lake realm. In the past few months, his cultivation had stagnated. Killing Lu Ye, then Li Baxin, had become his obsession. Because he could feel that he did not have many chances to kill Lu Ye. Lu Ye's cultivation was advancing at a godly speed. When he was in the hunting ground, Lu Ye was chased to a dead end. In the end, he was forced to use the golden body token to summon the Heaven's Fate Pillar to escape. After that, Xia Liang and Tan Xing went to the returning Sky Valley Spirit Land together. Lu Ye used the power of the Spirit Array to defeat them and even killed Wei Quebec. Every time Xia Liang saw Lu Ye's strength would skyrocket. Last time, when he came out of the 100 Formation Tower, he was able to survive the joint attack of 4 Ninth Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. With such a terrifying growth rate, if Xia Liang did not take the opportunity to kill Lu Ye, he would not have the chance to do so. Therefore, even if he did not break through to the true lake realm, he had to kill Lu Ye first. Only with Lu Ye dead could he boldly attack the returning Sky Valley Spirit Land, kill Li Baxin, and avenge Yan Xing. Chu Yun and Zhou Pei won't leave, Xia Liang said again when he saw that Tan Xing was still a little worried. The people of Sacred Flame sect were very stubborn. Since these two had set their eyes on Lu Ye, they would not give up, not to mention the great grievances between Sacred Flame sect and Blue Blood sect. Tan Xing nodded. As long as Chu Yun and Zhou Pei did not leave, the four of them would not have to worry too much. If the others really wanted to leave, they could not force them to stay. 50 kilometers away from the broken transmission array altar, Li Baxin, Feng Yuchan, and Zhu Jia were quietly hiding. If Hua Ci could get the news and come here, they could naturally get the news as well. However, the enemy outnumbered them, and the three of them could not do anything. Moreover, Li Baxin did not dare to show up rashly. Otherwise, if Xia Liang found out, he would most likely be targeted. At that time, not only would he fail to save the others, he would also be implicated. What did that junior sister Hua Ci say? Feng Yuchan asked. Feng Yuchan looked at Li Baxin and asked. Thinking of that junior sister Hua Ci, Feng Yuchan could not help but admire her. Although Hua Ci was only a medical cultivator, she would not be captured so easily. The cultivators of Grand Sky Alliance had charged into the formation several times, but not a single one was captured alive. Only Hua Ci. This was not because she was stupid, but because she did it on purpose. Even if she had the identity of a medical cultivator as a guarantee, her actions were too bold. Who would have thought that such a gentle person would have such unexpected methods? Everything is under control. Li Baxin replied with a strange expression. Of course, this wasn't his idea, but rather Hua Ci's. Junior sister Hua Ci told us not to act blindly without thinking. If junior brother really did appear from that side, she would lend a hand. Feng Yuchan did not understand. But what method does this junior sister have to save someone from so many myriad demons ridge cultivators? Li Baxin shook his head, indicating that he did not know. He also did not understand where Hua Ci's confidence came from. Chapter 745. In the Soaring Dragon Realm, the moment Lu Yi saw Hua Ci through the reflection on the water surface, his heart was set. Today's matter was settled. Originally, he was still hesitating whether to stay in the Soaring Dragon Realm to cultivate for a while and leave after the Wanmo Ridge cultivators outside had mostly dispersed. Now, there was no need for that. With a thought, the water-like ripples in front of him suddenly became more real. On the altar where the broken transmission array remained, several Wanmo Ridge Formation cultivators were studying how to repair the transmission array in front of them. Suddenly, there was a change. The void above the altar was like the calm surface of a lake that had a stone thrown into it. Inexplicable ripples appeared. The formation cultivators were all startled. One of them said, "Brother Yuan, what did you do?" The formation cultivator called Brother Yuan was confused. "I didn't do anything. I was just trying to see if I could directly activate this array without repairing it." Who knew that it would actually work? The formation cultivators were all overjoyed. If they had known this would happen, why would they repair it? Just as they were thinking this, a figure suddenly appeared in the ripples. The array cultivators were all stunned by what they saw. When there was an abnormality here, the nearby Wanmo Ridge cultivators also noticed it. Therefore, the moment the figure appeared, someone was overjoyed and exclaimed, "Lu Ye!" Vaguely, through the ripple-like reflection, they saw Lu Ye's figure and saw a broken and lifeless world that seemed to be heading toward destruction. Those with sharp eyes and nimble hands, the moment they recognized Lu Yi, had already activated their imperial equipment and techniques to attack. Obviously, they wanted to gain the upper hand by making the first move. However, all the attacks passed through Lu Ye's figure without causing the slightest bit of damage to him. More Wanmo Ridge cultivators gathered from all directions, and the scene became chaotic for a moment. In the crowd, Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and the others stared at Lu Ye's reflection. With their eyesight, they could not see what was going on with Lu Yi. They only vaguely felt that this reflection was not real, so even if they attacked it, it would be meaningless. However, they had waited here bitterly for a month and a half. Now that things had finally taken a turn for the better, they were naturally excited. This time, no matter what, he had to kill Lu Ye. He couldn't let him escape again. On the other side of the crowd, a Wanmo Ridge cultivator stared blankly at the gentlewoman in front of him. For some reason, he suddenly felt that this medical cultivator from the Haotian Alliance had a charming smile. "I'm sorry." The woman's voice was as gentle as water, and the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were being treated by her were confused. Then he saw an unbelievable scene. A layer of dark green light gushed out from the gentlewoman's delicate body. In an instant, it turned into a thick green fog that swept out in all directions. From the moment the green mist appeared to the moment it spread, only a single breath had passed, and at this moment, almost everyone's attention was attracted by Lu Ye's reflection, so no one noticed this change. The dark green mist instantly enveloped an area of several hundred meters. At the same time, on the ground, where Hua Ci had walked past, huge colorful mushrooms suddenly appeared out of thin air. They grew from nothing, from small to large, at an extremely fast speed. "What is this?" Exclamations sounded. "Oh no, it's poisonous. The goddamn Haotian Alliance poisoned us. Get out!" Exclamations rose one after another. The scene that was originally chaotic because of Lu Ye's sudden appearance became even more chaotic. Figures rushed into the sky and quickly left the area covered by the poisonous mist. Even so, these cultivators felt an unbearable itch on their bodies, as if countless insects were wriggling in their flesh. What made them even more alarmed was that the flow of spiritual power in their bodies had become stagnant. The myriad Demon Ridge cultivators reacted quickly in the face of such a change. In just 3 breaths of time, almost everyone had rushed out. Only Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and a few others stayed in front of the altar. It was not that they were immune to poison, but the sudden appearance of the poisonous fog was not something they could easily resist. Coupled with the explosive powder from the strange mushrooms, the longer they stayed here, the worse their situation would become. But Xia Liang clearly saw that Lu Ye's figure had just appeared and seemed to be about to walk out when such a strange change occurred. It was obvious that someone was working with Lu Ye to escape this place. So he was unwilling to retreat like this. After failing to kill Lu Ye several times, he was about to lose his patience. Inside the poisonous mist, he stared at the light curtain like a reflection, looking at Lu Yi, who seemed to be in another space. He thought that the other party couldn't see him, but he didn't expect Lu Yi to raise his eyes and look directly into his eyes, revealing a provocative smile. "Bastard!" Xia Liang was furious. He could see Lu Yi, but Lu Yi could see him too. "Brother Xia, it's time to go." Tan Xing's face was green. After staying in this thick green mist for less than 10 breaths, he only felt that his strength had been suppressed by about 30%. If he continued to stay, the situation would be even worse. He didn't know if he would be poisoned to death, but if Lu Yi rushed out, he might not be able to stop him in his current state. Saying this, without waiting for Xia Liang's agreement, he grabbed him and rushed into the sky. Xia Liang roared. Hatred. Monstrous hatred. The opportunity was clearly in front of him, and he could have killed Lu Yi this time, so why did such a change happen? Who was it that did this in the dark? Almost at the same time that Xia Liang and Tan Xing left, Lu Yi also took a step forward. One step was the difference between realms. He felt a little regretful in his heart. It seemed that his plan to hide in the Soaring Dragon realm when he encountered danger would not work. This was because he realized that if he really wanted to walk out of the Soaring Dragon realm, there would be a slight delay. Even though this process would only take 3 to 5 breaths, to a powerful cultivator, 3 to 5 breaths of time was too much of a variable. And this was just walking out. What would it be like when he hid in the Soaring Dragon realm with the help of the Soaring Dragon realm's origin? He would have to try it himself in the future to know. A familiar aura rushed towards him. Previously, he had been active in the Cloudy River battlefield and didn't pay much attention to such an aura. However, after experiencing the deathly silence of the Soaring Dragon realm, he realized the beauty of the Cloudy River battlefield. It was full of vitality and vitality. The reflection behind him quickly disappeared. Without hesitation, Lu Yi immediately activated wind travel and rushed towards the direction in his memory. In that direction, Hua Si stood quietly in the thick mist. Beside her was a myriad demon ridge cultivator, who looked as if he was sleeping, his expression calm. Suddenly, she raised her eyes and looked forward. Although she couldn't see anything, she could clearly sense that there was an unbelievably strong vitality rapidly approaching her. So powerful? Hua Si's face was filled with surprise. As a medical cultivator, for the time being, she was more sensitive to things like vitality than other cultivators. The last time Lu Yi went to visit her in the Forest of 1,000 Poisons, her vitality was strong, but not to this extent. This kind of vitality, she had only seen it in Shui Yuan. In other words, in terms of vitality, Lu Yi, who was now in the Cloudy River realm, was almost on par with Shui Yuan, who had reached the Divine Ocean realm. This was, without a doubt, an inconceivable thing. If she wasn't sure that the vitality was Lu Yi's, Hua Si would have thought that the person rushing towards her was someone else. However, she didn't know that nearly a month ago, Lu Yi's origin was still in deficit. She looked withered and almost died in the Soaring Dragon realm. Now, this huge vitality was all brought by the Soaring Dragon realm's origin. Even if there was only a trace of the Soaring Dragon realm's origin left, it was still the origin of a realm. Compared to an individual like a cultivator, it was still incomparably huge. It was like the sea that was about to dry up. The benefits that the seawater could bring to Lu Yi's small pond were not as simple as bringing him back from the dead. A strong wind blew, and Hua Si felt herself being hugged by the waist. A familiar voice sounded in her ears. "Hold me tight." The tone was resolute and unquestionable. There was a faint trace of dominance that was difficult to refuse. Hua Si couldn't help but open her arms and hug the man in front of her. Whoosh, fire-red spiritual power flowed out and spread out behind Lu Yi, turning into a pair of wings. On the wings, mysterious patterns flashed with light, supporting him with the wind. Enemies surrounded him from all directions. Now that he was in danger, with a soft and warm body in his arms and a familiar body fragrance lingering at the tip of his nose, Lu Yi's state of mind immediately calmed down. Lowering his head and looking into Hua Si's eyes, Lu Yi smiled slightly. "Let's go." Hua Si was stunned by his smile for a moment. Before she could react, she had already rushed forward at an extremely fast speed. That speed was something she had never experienced before. She couldn't help but exclaim in a low voice. In the thick green fog, there was a figure bursting with chi. Rushing out, the fiery red wings on his back flapped, creating a hole in the viscous fog. Lu Ye, a cultivator from the Myriad Demon's Ridge, saw this scene and immediately shouted. In the direction in front of Lu Yi, there were more than 10 people scattered around, all of them ready for battle. Seeing that Lu Yi was actually rushing towards them, they were all overjoyed and urged their bodies to meet him. Clang. The Pan-Shan saber was unsheathed. Lu Yi held Hua Xi's soft and boneless waist with one hand and hugged her tightly. His strength was so great that Hua Xi felt as if she was going to melt into his body. With one hand holding the saber, he was like a ferocious beast that had just escaped from a cage. His entire body was wrapped in a boundless, ferocious, and violent aura. Those who block me die. The long saber cut through the void. The saber flashed and screams rang out. The cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge who were facing Lu Yi fell down like raindrops. Chapter 746. High up in the sky, a fiery red stream of light flashed like a bolt of red lightning. Behind it, a large number of streams of light chased after it with surging murderous intent. Leading them were Xia Liang, Tan Xing, and the others. Looking at Lu Ye's figure in the distance, Xia Liang's heart was filled with murderous intent, but he also felt a trace of relief because he noticed that compared to a month and a half ago, Lu Ye's spirit energy fluctuations had not changed much. In other words, his cultivation had not increased much. This made Xia Liang breathe a sigh of relief. For a long time, Lu Ye's growth rate had given him a sense of horror. Others might not have made much progress in a month and a half, but Lu Yi was different. Now that he saw that Lu Yi was still a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, Xia Liang was naturally relieved. But soon, he found that the situation was not quite right. Lu Yi's cultivation had not made much progress, but his speed seemed to be much faster than before. Because the speed Lu Yi showed at this moment was almost the same as last time. But last time, he was alone, and this time, he was holding a person in his arms, so the difference was naturally not the same. Moreover, all of them had been poisoned, and the flow of spirit energy in their bodies had stagnated, causing their strength to drop. As a result, even if these pursuers tried their best, they could not close the distance between them and Lu Yi, and were even slowly being shaken off. Damn it! How could a 6th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator fly so fast? Is that flying wing tattoo really so powerful? They had no advantage in speed, so the only thing they could count on now was to compete with Lu Yi in terms of spirit energy, hoping that Lu Yi would exhaust himself and not be able to maintain this speed. The cultivators of the Myriad Demon's Ridge were quickly reporting Lu Ye's current location and the direction he was heading in. From time to time, someone would jump out from the front to stop him. This forced Lu Yi to constantly change his direction, and as a result, it became more and more difficult to completely shake off his pursuers. Fortunately, his goal was not to shake off these pursuers. While he was trying his best to escape, Hua Xi and he were chatting in his arms. He did not show up, but she could communicate with others through Hu Po's body. He had not seen Hua Xi for a long time. Now that he saw her again, he naturally felt very close to her. In particular, in the Soaring Dragon Mystery Realm, she had seen a little fairy doctor who looked exactly like Hua Xi. However, in comparison, the little fairy doctor was much more mature than the current Hua Xi. Yi told her about the Soaring Dragon Realm, and Hua Xi listened with great interest. When Yi finished, she asked, "So, who is the little fairy doctor?" Just as Lu Yi did not believe that the two domains had the same appearance, the same voice, the same temperament, and even the same cultivation sect. Hua Xi also keenly sensed that there was a huge problem with the little fairy doctor. "I don't know. You have to ask Lu Yi." In the end, the fairy doctor said something to Lu Yi alone. Alone? Hua Xi glanced at Lu Yi faintly, but saw that he was concentrating on flying in the air, so she didn't dare to disturb him. Hua Xi was startled. "I forgot to inform 4th senior brother and the others." 4th senior brother? Lu Yi frowned. What happened to 4th senior brother and the others? As Hua Xi replied to the message, she said, "It's all because 4th senior brother and the others heard that you were trapped here that they rushed over. But what can they do if they're alone? They were repelled by the Myriad Devil Ridge several times. They have been waiting for your news. Lu Ye's heart warmed. In the end, he could rely on his own family. When they heard that he was trapped, fourth senior brother and the others came over. Hua Xi also came over. Moreover, she was in danger and was in the enemy's formation. This time, if Hua Xi had not cooperated with him and helped him, he was afraid that he would really have to hide in the soaring dragon realm for a while. Tell fourth senior brother to tell them to return to Huitian Valley. I'm fine here. Okay. On the other side, Li Baxian finished checking the message from Hua Xi. His brows that had been tightly knitted for many days finally relaxed. He let out a long breath. Little junior brother is free. Feng Yuechan was surprised. Really? Not long ago, Hua Xi had sent a message saying that everything was under control. How long had it been? She had actually helped Lu Yi out. Just what kind of shocking technique did this junior sister Hua Xi use to be able to accomplish such an inconceivable thing? One had to know that there were several hundred myriad Demon Ridge cultivators gathered there, and there was no lack of ninth-order Cloud River Realm masters among them. Little junior brother told us to return to Huitian Valley first. Li Baxian stood up and said, "Let's go." Lu Yi had already escaped, so there was no point in them staying here any longer. Instead of wasting time here, they might as well go back and cultivate diligently. Only when their cultivation was high enough would they not be so powerless the next time something like this happened. A sword light swept across the sky and the three figures quickly left. As they fled, more and more myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were left behind. Even Xiao Yang, Tan Sheng, and the others could not hold on any longer. It was not because they had consumed too much spirit energy, but because they were afraid of the poison that had invaded their bodies. Although the poison was not fatal, it made their spirit energy stagnate and affected their performance. If they did not resolve it in time, it was very likely that it would leave behind hidden dangers. But even if they took antidote pills, it did not have much effect. In this situation, they could only seek medical treatment. Therefore, after chasing Lu Yi for 2 hours, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had chased him out of the 100 Formation Pagoda had disappeared. Only a few people who had killed their way out were still chasing after Lu Yi. But under such a hasty alliance, how meticulous could the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators be? Every time they were about to form an encirclement, Lu Yi would kill his way out and escape. After another 2 hours, a city appeared in the distance. They had arrived at the nearby Heaven's Secret City. This was also Lu Ye's initial goal. If there was an absolutely safe place in the Cloud River battlefield, it was undoubtedly the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. Therefore, when being chased by an unrivaled enemy, the best way was to escape to the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance. As long as they hid in the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance, no matter how strong the enemy was, they would not be able to do anything to them. Moreover, the Heaven's Secret Commerce Alliance had the Heaven's Secret Pillar, so they could use it to return to the 9 states at any time. Since ancient times, countless cultivators of the 9 states had relied on this method to preserve their lives. At this moment, 10 kilometers outside of Heaven's Secret City, a group of figures appeared in the sky. They were all myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had received the news. There were not many of them, but there were also quite a few of them. Although there were no 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators, there were several 8th Order cultivators. This group of people waited here nervously and apprehensively, constantly receiving news from various places. Because from Lu Ye's escape route, he was heading straight for this Heaven's Secret City. Therefore, their goal was very simple, and that was to stop Lu Yi before he rushed into Heaven's Secret City. "He's here!" A low shout sounded. Many of the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who were waiting here raised their heads and saw a stream of light flying towards them at an extremely fast speed. The flame-like color matched the information they had received. Who else could it be but Lu Yi? The group of myriad Devil Ridge cultivators immediately became excited. Each of them rubbed their palms together, and imperial artifacts floated in front of them as they secretly prepared their techniques. "So fast!" another person exclaimed. Because at a glance, the fiery red stream of light was ridiculously fast. It was almost equivalent to the speed of a 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator flying at full speed. Moreover, according to the information they received, Lu Yi had a woman with him. In the Spirit Stream tier and Cloud River tier, cultivators cultivated to raise their own cultivation level and increase their own strength. However, something as mysterious as will and technique was not something that they could touch now. Even in those first-grade sects with long histories, there were only a few who were qualified to touch these things. Lu Yi, with his 6th order Cloud River realm cultivation, was able to display his own saber technique, which was simply shocking. How could they possibly kill such a character with a lineup that didn't even have a 9th order master? Within the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, Lu Yi brazenly rushed in with Hua Ci. In an instant, many pairs of eyes in the hall were focused on them. Countless people looked surprised and doubtful. At the same time, Lu Yi also felt several dark and sharp auras lock onto him. He knew that this was an expert from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. No one was allowed to act presumptuously in the Tianji Business Alliance, and no one was allowed to fight here. After witnessing the power of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance with his own eyes, Lu Yi naturally didn't think that the elites guarding this place were only at the Cloud River tier. Who knew, they might suddenly reveal the strength of a true Lake Realm cultivator. Lightly shaking off the blood on his saber, Lu Yi sheathed his saber and slowly retracted his burgeoning vitality. Only then did the auras that locked onto him slowly dissipate. Honored guest. A steward walked up and looked at Lu Yi helplessly. Give me a guest room. Lu Yi ordered. Honored guest, please wait a moment. The steward said and raised his hand to touch his battlefield mark. Obviously, he was consulting someone. After a moment, he gestured to Lu Yi, honored guest, this way please. He followed the steward to the 3rd floor and entered the guest room. After paying the 10 days' rent, he closed the door. Hoopa jumped down from Lu Yi's shoulder and shook his body. He also flashed out of Hoopo's body. Just as she was about to catch up with Hua Ci, Lu Yi suddenly turned around and glared at Hua Ci. You're too bold. His tone was unprecedentedly harsh and his expression was somewhat fierce. He immediately swallowed the words that were about to come out of her mouth and looked at Lu Yi in surprise. She didn't know why he was suddenly angry. He was fine on the road just now. Hua Ci looked at Lu Yi in confusion. What? Who told you to take the risk alone? You're a medical cultivator and you dare to go in with hundreds of Wanmo Ridge cultivators? Lu Yi reprimanded with a straight face. Although Lu Yi had seen Hua Ci's figure in the Soaring Dragon realm and knew that he would be able to escape safely with her around, at that time, he had actually been scared out of his wits. Cultivators came in all shapes and sizes. Although medical cultivators had an advantage that cultivators of other sects couldn't reach, who knew if any of the Wanmo Ridge cultivators had evil intentions towards Hua Ci? If such a thing really happened, who could save Hua Ci in that kind of situation? Are you worried about me? Hua Ci looked into Lu Yi's eyes and her long eyelashes fluttered twice. Nonsense. Lu Yi admitted without hesitation. Have you ever thought about what if something happened to you? Hua Ci pursed her lips and chuckled. How could something happen to me? I have confidence. During the days when she was a captive, she didn't just treat the injuries of the Wanmo Ridge cultivators. Her methods were really unpredictable. Even Xiao Yang and the others didn't notice. What kind of evil intentions could a beautiful and gentle medical cultivator have? You're a medical cultivator who just advanced to Yunhan not long ago. How can you be so confident? How can you be so sure? How can you be so sure that those people won't hurt you? Hua Ci looked at Lu Yi with interest. After knowing him for so long, this was the first time she saw Lu Yi so flustered and exasperated. So although Lu Yi's tone was fierce, she clicked her tongue and teased, Look at this person's face when he treats his savior. He didn't dare to say anything. She only shrank in the corner with Hoopa. Hu Ling looked over weakly. What savior? Lu Yi was furious. Don't think that I can't escape. I only chose to show myself because I saw you over there. If he didn't see Hua Ci, he really would have stayed in the Dragon Soaring realm for a while. At the very least, he had to wait until the cultivators of the Wanmo Ridge were almost gone before leaving. Hua Ci suddenly cried, as if she had been greatly wronged. I saved your life. It's fine if you don't repay me with your body, but you're so fierce to me. Speak properly. Lu Yi continued to be serious. Hua Si looked at him timidly. Didn't I speak properly? Lu Yi took a deep breath. Suddenly, he grabbed her and threw her onto the bed. Then, he raised his hand and slapped her. But a sound was heard. The whole world suddenly became quiet. Hua Si threw herself on the bed. She turned her head and looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. Her cheeks flushed, and she was absent-minded for a moment. Yi's small mouth was slightly open. She couldn't close it for a long time. The scene in front of her had a great visual impact. Hoopa even raised his paws and covered his eyes. I can't look. I don't dare to look. I'm just a simple tiger. There can't be a next time. Lu Yi stared into Hua Si's eyes and warned her with a solemn expression. Hua Si didn't react. She was obviously stunned by the slap. She felt a burning pain on her back. She could imagine that Lu Yi really used his strength. She saw that Lu Yi had raised his hand again. Hua Si hurriedly replied, I know. There won't be a next time. She hurriedly got up, covered her back with both hands, and retreated to the corner of the wall. Lu Yi nodded with satisfaction. He turned his head and looked at Yi and Hoopa. You should also take this as a warning. Like a parent lecturing a naughty child. Yi and Hoopa nodded their heads like chickens pecking at rice. Rest first. I'll go out for a while. After Lu Yi finished speaking, he pushed open the door and walked out. Her face was as calm as water, but her heart was beating wildly. She was too emotional just now, and her blood rushed to her head. She didn't control herself for a moment. After the slap, she realized that it was inappropriate. But since she had already slapped, she could only brace herself and continue. It wasn't good to stay in the room anymore. She could only find an excuse to walk out. Fortunately, the result was not bad. After this incident, Hua Si shouldn't be so impulsive next time. But in his heart, he knew that Hua Si did it because of him. He didn't show this gratitude, but he remembered it in his heart. There was a message from the battlefield imprint. If he guessed correctly, it should be from fourth senior brother. After checking, it was indeed so. Lu Yi hurriedly replied and told fourth senior brother that he was safe. He also told him that he had arrived at the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and that he could rest assured. After ending the message with fourth senior brother, Lu Yi checked the information on his battlefield imprint. Lu Yi. Identity, Blue Blood Sect Disciple. Cultivation, 6th Order Cloud River Realm. Location, Cloud River Battlefield. Merit points, 127,366 points. Battle merit, 283,672 points. In terms of merit, there wasn't much change. At most, it increased by killing some myriad demons ridge cultivators. But his merit was extremely abundant. Although there was still a gap between the merit he obtained in Immortal Essence City, the gap wasn't too big. The most important thing was that the merit he obtained in Immortal Essence City last time was used to exchange for soul water. But now, he could freely use the merit he obtained. For example, exchanging it for a golden spirit stick. Now, his most important task was to quickly improve his cultivation. Last time in Immortal Essence City, if the value of soul water wasn't too high, he wouldn't have used up his merit. To be able to obtain such a huge amount of merit, it was naturally because he played an indispensable and even decisive role in many major events in the Soaring Dragon realm. In the Medicine Valley, he presided over the Great Array and cooperated with the Soaring Dragon cultivators to kill the enemy. In that battle alone, he obtained almost 30,000 merit points. Compared to the overall harvest, 30,000 merit points were naturally nothing. After that, he participated in the war against the Blood Race with the Soaring Dragon Cultivator Army. Under the ravine, he wore the Dragon Throne, broke the Traction Altar, and weakened the Blood World's attachment to the Soaring Dragon realm. That was another huge amount of merit points. After that, he built the 64 heaven mending platforms and presided over the mending of the heavens. That was also a huge amount of merit points. All these results added up to his current harvest. Chapter 748. Lu Yi had noticed it the last time he was in the sealed world of the realm of beasts. Compared to simply killing enemies, if one could participate in some of the major events that happened in the secret realm and play an important role in it, then one would be able to obtain a lot more battle merits. It was the same in the sealed world of the realm of beasts. However, he didn't gain a lot of battle points at that time, only about 30,000. The reason was that there were many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance who participated in the encirclement of Niomeng. His battle points were probably divided among them. In the Immortal Essence City, the reason why he could gain such a huge amount of battle points by killing enemies was because many of the insects he killed were comparable to true Lake Realm cultivators. The difference in battle points between true Lake Realm and Cloud River Realm was too big. A Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivator was only worth 60 battle points, but a true Lake 1st Order cultivator was worth 100 points, and a true Lake 9th Order cultivator was worth 900 points. In this trip to the Dragon Soaring Realm, if Lu Yi didn't play an important role in the subsequent events, it would be impossible for him to gain such a huge amount of battle points. With more than 280,000 battle points, he could exchange them for 17 golden spirit lots. With his current 6th Order Cloud River Realm cultivation, 17 golden spirit lots would allow him to reach 8th Order Cloud River Realm at least, and even 9th Order Cloud River Realm. Lu Yi was in a good mood. After going down to the 3rd floor, he arrived at the lobby. In an instant, pairs of eyes focused on him from all directions. Lu Yi looked around and saw the cultivators from Myriad Demons Ridge who blocked him outside the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. He also saw Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and the others. He had already shaken off Xia Liang and the others, but now he met them here. Xia Liang and the others didn't come here to kill him, but to find a medical cultivator to help them detoxify. The Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance did all kinds of business, including treating injuries and dispelling disasters. There were skilled medical cultivators in the Alliance all year round, but the fees were expensive. Under normal circumstances, the cultivators from the two camps wouldn't be willing to come here to seek medical treatment from the Alliance. However, Xia Liang and the others had no choice. They were in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, which was closest to them, so they could only rush over. On the way, they received news that Lu Yi was hiding in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. Now that they had met their enemies, their eyes were naturally filled with hatred. Their eyes were filled with killing intent and coldness. Lu Yi pretended not to see them. Unless they were tired of living, no one in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance would dare to make a move. Under the watchful eyes of a group of Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators, he walked towards the direction of the Tianji pillar and stood at the back of the group. Brother Xia, don't be rash. Detoxification is more important. Lu Yi won't be able to escape unless he uses the Tianji pillar to return to the 9 states. Tan Sheng tried to calm Xia Liang down. Xia Liang took a deep breath and felt a stabbing pain in his chest and abdomen. He gently nodded. I understand. The two of them took another long look at Lu Yi. Only then did they look for the manager of the merchant union and ask the union's medical cultivators to cure the poison. Before the Heavenly Mystery Pillar, the group moved quickly. At any rate, the cultivators who came here had already determined what they wanted to buy. Thus, they would not stay for too long. In less than an incense stick's worth of time, it was Lu Yi's turn. He stepped forward and pressed his hand on the Tianji pillar. With a thought, the huge Tianji treasury appeared in front of him. As usual, he searched for some special flames or elixir flames that could be devoured by the talent tree. He did not gain much and only bought a dozen of them. Then he bought a lot of beast cores and replenished his array flags. In total, he spent less than 10,000 contribution points. Then it was time for the highlight. This was also the moment that Lu Yi looked forward to the most. He could not help but feel excited. This was the first time he had used such a huge amount of contribution points to exchange for a golden spiritual lot. With a thought, golden spiritual lot. The surroundings of the Tianji treasury changed rapidly. However, it seemed to be different from normal. It did not quickly freeze and no golden spiritual lot appeared in front of him. Suddenly, a message appeared in his mind. Lu Yi sensed it and understood the specific content of this message. You have obtained the right to enter the War Merit Pavilion. War Merit Pavilion? What was that place? Lu Yi was a little surprised. He recalled all the information he had about the Cloud River battlefield and found that there was no record of the War Merit Pavilion. He was not a fledgling who had just entered the Cloud River battlefield. He was still clear about the most basic things about the Cloud River battlefield. Even if he had not come into contact with many things, he would have heard about them. Moreover, the War Merit Pavilion was too specific. He knew what it was used for. If other cultivators had entered the War Merit Pavilion, there was no reason that there would not be any news about it. However, from the information he had comprehended, not everyone could enter the War Merit Pavilion. This was because there was a qualification mentioned in the information. As for what kind of qualification one needed to enter the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi did not know. Perhaps one had to bear a huge amount of contribution points or some other requirements. This world was getting more and more interesting. Since he had obtained the qualification to enter the War Merit Pavilion, Lu Yi naturally wanted to take a look. In his heart, he muttered the words, War Merit Pavilion. In the next moment, the rapidly changing scenery suddenly froze. Lu Yi looked up and saw a thick and simple door in front of him that was tightly shut. On the left and right of the door, there were two flood dragons with horns on their heads swimming around, as if they were alive. When Lu Yi looked at them, the two flood dragons suddenly froze and looked back at him. Their huge vertical pupils were suffused with a cold light, and their forked tongues hissed in and out of their mouths, making people shudder. A desolate and ferocious aura rushed towards him. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. These two flood dragons were really alive. Moreover, the aura on their bodies was unfathomable. With Lu Ye's current eyesight and perception, he could not sense their depth. Two flood dragons guarding the door? Just what was this War Merit Pavilion for? On the door, there was a seemingly rusty plaque, and the words, War Merit Pavilion, were carved. Oh! Suddenly, the flood dragon on the left spoke in human language. Its slender body stretched out from the door and circled around Lu Yi. Its huge head was almost touching Lu Ye's face, and the hot breath it exhaled made Lu Ye's skin hurt. After so many years, someone finally came again? It seemed to be sniffing Lu Ye's aura. And it's a very young and delicious boy. The flood dragon on the right remained motionless on the door. At this moment it spoke, You have guts. Even if Lu Ye's temperament was not bad, he still felt nervous at this moment. Fortunately, he knew that it was not his own body that had entered here, but a manifestation of his mind. Therefore, although his mood was heavy, he did not panic at all. This made the flood dragon on the right give him a good evaluation. I just don't know if he will live long. The flood dragon on the left continued, and there was a trace of mockery and sarcasm in its tone. It retracted its body and once again occupied its territory. Then, the two flood dragons wriggled together and coiled their bodies in circles. When the two flood dragons coiled into two concentric circles, there was suddenly a click from the door, as if the door lock had been opened. Go in. But boy, you have to remember one thing. Everything in the War Merit Pavilion can only be used by yourself, and you can't reveal a word about the War Merit Pavilion to anyone. Lu Yi cupped his fists and saluted. I will remember. He finally understood why he had never heard of the War Merit Pavilion. It turned out that there were all kinds of restrictions to entering the War Merit Pavilion. The things inside could only be used by himself, and he could not reveal information about the War Merit Pavilion to anyone else. In this way, even if someone had entered the War Merit Pavilion, no one else would know. Moreover, from the information revealed by the flood dragon on the left, it was not so easy to qualify to enter the War Merit Pavilion. It was not something that could be achieved by carrying a large number of war merits. Because from the information revealed by the flood dragon, it seemed that no one had entered the War Merit Pavilion for many years. Perhaps 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Lu Yi was the first person in all these years. While Lu Yi was lost in thought, the door of the War Merit Pavilion had slowly opened. He stepped in. It was a spacious room. The walls around were made of an unknown material, giving people a feeling of extreme sturdiness. However, Lu Yi was sure that even if the main body of a divine sea realm cultivator was here, they would not be able to damage the place at all. It was not like the Tianji treasury, which was full of shelves. In the entire War Merit Pavilion, there was not a single shelf. There were only pieces of pitch-black stone platforms. As far as the eye could see, there were at least 800 stone platforms, if not 1,000. It seemed that there was an item placed on each stone platform. Lu Yi walked to the stone platform closest to him and looked over. The stone platform was covered with a layer of light curtain. Inside the light curtain, a golden spiritual stick was imprinted into his eyes. The golden spiritual stick could be exchanged directly in the Tianji treasury. There was also a golden spiritual stick in the War Merit Pavilion. It seemed a bit redundant. However, Lu Ye's attention was not on the golden spiritual stick, but on the layer of light curtain. This was a protective array. Furthermore, it was an extremely sturdy and small defensive formation. Lu Ye's attainments in formations were not low. He could casually arrange protective arrays, but it was impossible for him to arrange such a small and exquisite protective array. Formations were not easy to arrange when the area they covered was smaller. This was true to a certain extent, but beyond this range, the difficulty of the arrangement would sharply increase. The protective array in front of him was beyond the scope of Lu Ye's ability, so when he saw it, Lu Yi was interested. As a qualified formation cultivator, he naturally wanted to understand how such a small and exquisite array could be maintained. If he could comprehend the mystery, it would be of great help to his formation skills. 7017K, you're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.